6:01 p.m. This is a regularly scheduled board meeting of the Truckee Donner Public Utility District. As I said, it is 6:01 p.m. on Wednesday, May 6, 2026. Martina, can I have roll call, please?
Sure. Director Bender?
Here.
Director Finn?
Here.
Director Randall? Vice President Morrell?
Here.
President Laludis?
Here. All right. Jeff, would you lead us in the pledge tonight?
Yes. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Ryan, are there any changes to the agenda tonight?
Yes. Excuse me. President Laludis, we'd like to pull consent items number 10 and number 17 from the agenda this evening and present those at a later date.
Very well. We will not take up items 10 and 17 tonight. All right, so now this is time for public comment. This is time set aside for the public to address the board on any matter that is not on the agenda tonight. Testimony related to any agendized matter should be addressed at the time that that item is considered. So is there any public comment tonight? I don't see any, so we'll close public comment and we'll move on to director updates. I will start with Krista.
I do have just a couple of quick updates. One was that I attended the CTA, the quarterly CTA meeting with Mr. Poncelet. There he is. He was our fearless leader on that. That was sort of an incubator session where various districts and businesses and people brought forward plans that they have that can help our region reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, and we were focused on our PUDs, community solar, and battery storage project, potential community solar and battery storage project. And I also attended a educational seminar out at Hobart Mills about mass timber products, which is potentially something that will help us with our vegetation mitigation situation. So those are my updates.
All right. Courtney? Nothing tonight, okay. Director Bender? All good? Steve? Good. All right. I just have one item. I just want to announce that I will be filing and running for this office again come August. So just want to make that known. And lastly, just thanks to all the staff for all the hard work putting these meeting agendas together, all the staff in the field. As the temperature warms up, so does the activity. So let's be safe out there and remind the public that our crews are working hard, and they're typically working in the right of ways, and so please be careful and take your time. And this is road construction season, so patience is paramount. So anyway, with that, we will move on to department updates.
Good evening, President Laludis, members of the board. Mike Swanson reporting out for electric engineering and operations. So our reliability metrics, looking at March and year to date, we'll start with year to date. We're still looking very good. We're 90%, 97% under target for safety, and just as a reminder, that's frequency, 97% better than we were last year. On our SAIDI, we're 94% better than we were last year. And we're still bringing up the rear with Katie. It's 83% worse, but again, that's a volume metric. Looking at March, again, we're better in both safety and SAIDI. And in Katie, we had a little bit better performance in March. Again, this is a month lagging report. So we'll do April and June. So we had a couple key drivers. We had very low volume in March, by the way. Our largest outage was 3 customers that were out for 4 hours and 53 minutes due to a failed transformer. And we had 4 planned transformer outages that impacted a total of 10 customers. Our power provider did not have any outages for the month, so that was great. And I thought I'd talk a little bit tonight about gridware. We've had gridware installed for a couple months now. We have seen some events that have taken place, 4 events that have taken place since installed. One of them was one that I had requested information from gridware. It had been a couple weeks. We hadn't received anything, which if we don't receive anything, it's good and bad, right? 1, we don't know if it's working. 2, it means there's no problems on the system. So again, good and bad. So we had a crew working on a line that had a gridware device. So I asked gridware to provide some information, whether the device was able to detect it, and it was. So they confirmed that a lineman had climbed a pole, and that they had worked on secondary. They sent pictures of the work they did before and after. So that was good. That was a good start. Then we had 2 events that occurred during weather event days on April 1st and April 2nd. You may recall there was snow those 2 days. The GridScope device detected momentary transmission outage on the Donner Lake 2 circuit, which it was a momentary outage for both Donner Lake and Tahoe Donner substations. Both outages lasted less than 5 minutes. And without gridware, there's a high likelihood that we would not have identified those as being momentary outages unless we received customer calls. So good information that we got from gridware on those 2 events. The 4th event was on April 14th, again, another weather day. We got a notification from gridware that there was incident on one of our poles on the west end of Donner Lake, and we went out there. Snow had unloaded off of the conductor, shook the pole. No outage, but it was great to know. When I think about that, I think about what if we were in fire season? What if a tree branch hit our line? We would know and know directly where to go. So all events were captured, communicated in real time. We got text messages, we got emails, and we were able to address those immediately. So the technology is performing as designed and improving the system visibility and situational awareness. My last slide here is going to remain the same throughout construction season. Our key focus is going to be system hardening, wildfire mitigation, our grid modernization and technology integration, reliability performance improvement, our capital project execution, which is Martis Valley Substation as one of those, and electric system master plan advancement. With that, I'll turn it over to Chad.
Mike, I have one question. The gridware sensors or the monitors, are we fully deployed, meaning our entire system is covered, or are we continuing to expand?
I would love to be fully deployed. No, we installed 376 devices. It covered about 2.5 circuits of our 18 total circuits.
Okay.
So we have planned for, if successful pilot, we have planned for $1 million a year, 5-year project.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you.
I just have,
One more question.
I just have one last thing. As you're talking about key focus areas and system hardening, your crews are busy at work on Northwoods Boulevard. Lots of trucks, lots of crews, lots of action as I was passing, and I did roll down my window and said, "Thank you, PUD." And they did give me thumbs up and waved, and they're very friendly. So they're doing good work out there.
Excellent. I'll also mention, since you brought that up, we started our dock crew today. So they were working with our crews on the Northwoods project, and they will actually be starting on the other end of the project, starting tomorrow, and working towards each other and working with one another. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Good evening, President Loliotis and members of the board. We're going to start off with a graphic that we're very familiar with. we're going to continue to talk about this as we go throughout the year because the number that we need to remember is we need a 1% reduction is what we're shooting for. Currently, over the last month, when we compare the March to March, we see about a 2% reduction. And if I do the 3 years worth of marches, we see about a 7% reduction. So this means we're still going in the right direction. And we're very pleased to see that we believe we're going to be able to hit that goal of the 1% that we've been talking about as we go forth. Over the past month, we've had 4 leaks, which is a little bit abnormal for this time of the year because normally we have enough snow still on the ground that it's hard to know where the leaks versus the runoff and different things of that nature are. So it's something that as we've been moving forward, with this season, we've been able to capture a lot more of the leaks and handle it a lot quicker. Before I move on, though, I'd like to recognize the electric crew. Recently, we had an issue with one of our wells, the airport well, where we started seeing some water in the bottom seal. And when we saw the water there and it was getting into the oil, we knew we had an issue. So we knew we needed to take this down, get it repaired, and bring it back up prior to the summer rush coming on or the higher demand. The electric crew was able to break a group loose so that they could crane our motor up and out. We were able to have a contract. We got down, got it back, and about a week is what it ended up being, which we were really, really appreciative of how quick they responded to our call of help. And it's great to have all the departments here. Well, 20. So we had reported about 2 months ago that everything was done. It was up. It was tested. Everything was going great. And then when we went to sound it the one day, the sounding tube apparently broke off, and we lost about 300 feet of sounding tube down. We had called the providers that did the last work. They came back out. They pulled it. They've been able to recover that PVC in the meantime, and we're in the process of next week. It'll be rebanded to the column, and it'll be put back down. So we're hope to say round 2 of, 20 completion is going to be great. Well, round 1, I don't know about that yet.
Was that on warranty or?
It is. It was total warranty, and so it was all included in that. There was no money out of our pocket. A good question, though, Director Randall. Future capital projects. We have the Hirschdale pipeline that is coming up. It looks like that's going to begin the beginning of June. We're just waiting for things to dry out down there and make sure that we're going. We also have the rehab project, which is, we're wanted to start this last week, but we're hoping to start in the next week or so that will be moving forward. We have the ski bowl condos. That's another area that needs to dry just a little bit, so it's more of a June type time frame. And then Martis Woods and Sitzmark are still in engineering. We're hoping to bring something to you guys. It wouldn't be the immediate next or bring something to the board in the next meeting, but we're not sure, subsequent meeting, excuse me. We're not sure we're going to be able to make it in that time frame. So we're moving as quick as we can. We still want to see those projects this summer if possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Chad.
Good evening, President Liliotis, members of the board. I'm Brad Weiss, the IT Operations Manager, and I'll be giving the information technology update this month. So I'm going to go over a couple projects that the IT department's been working on. One of them's the video security system. So modernizing that includes updating all the backend infrastructure and making sure that we can do new things in the video world in terms of like analytical events. So back in the day, you used to record everything or record only on motion, and a lot of that's gotten a lot better over time. So we're working on that in the new software, and then making sure the newer hardware is up to date and being able to handle the new cameras and the additional recording space, all that stuff on the back end. We're planning future improvements and come up with a device lifecycle plan to make sure that we're replacing stuff before it breaks. That's something big, a big push in IT is get everything we can on a device lifecycle plan to make sure that we are replacing things before they break, not after they break. The second project, something that staff has talked about previously, is the phone system modernization project. So that's moving all of our phone system to a new unified communication system. So we've completed the desk phones, moved over in this building, the analog lines in this building, And over the next quarter, we'll be decommissioning the old system, getting rid of all those old copper lines, and realizing some of the cost savings of that project. So that's going well. It's a lot of work and a change to all staff. So that's moving forward. The next one I want to talk about quick here is the Skater Reliability and Improvement Project that was approved at the previous board meeting. Schedule, started working on it this week with the contractor, and right now they've been kind of just doing permitting, working with the town, things of that nature. The first milestone of this project is along Brockway Road. There's kind of an excerpt from the plans there, trenching that area. During the planning phase, we realized with the town of Truckee that they're actually going to pave that section of road. So they asked that we completed that before the June 4th to get out of their way. So contractors aware of that. That's all moving forward. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on is Truckee North Tahoe Tech Teens, so TNT Tech Teens. That's the program where us and other agencies around the area put on different technology events at each location for students in the high schools. And that program's scheduled to wrap up on the 7th. But what I wanted to call out is it's not only beneficial to the students, it's also been beneficial on the IT side. A lot of the different IT people at these different agencies have gotten to meet and talk and figure out what each other is doing. So it's a good collaboration opportunity as well. I also wanted to shout out the Chamber of Commerce. They're the ones who have done a lot of the administrative work for that program. So just a shout out to them. And then I believe on tomorrow we're having a ceremony where the students will get awards, and I think President Liliotis is going to be able to attend that. So that's awesome. Thanks.
Good evening, President Laliotis, members of the board. Stephen Ponsley here with Public Information and Strategic Affairs. Want to talk on the communications side of the house and share some of the excellent work that our communication program manager Alex has been doing. Our website is nearing final draft, and we really wanted to have it great for you, and so expect that to come back in the next meeting. Our water conservation campaign, we talked about it when we talked about the 2026 plan. That's kicking off a main event. To kick it off is the first of two garden parties, which is Saturday, May 30th, 11 to 2. And that one's really going to be on awareness and raising awareness of the new regulations and, of what we're doing to try to help our customers and community comply. And then in September, we'll do a second garden event that's going to be the call to action with the nurseries and the landscapers and the rebates and stuff that we can do to help our customers comply. We did kick off the annual Carbon Bingo sweepstakes. You'll see a press release, I think an all-customer email went out and a bunch of other stuff. Alex did attend the annual Sierra Nevada House Dia del Nino event. We are trying to beef up our outreach to the Hispanic community, and that's one event that's very specific to our Hispanic customers. And we were there with both our regular staff and then our staff that could speak Spanish, which is critical for these events. And then Alex did present at the North Tahoe Truckee Leadership Program as a recent graduate, and again, another collaboration across, the communities to share resources and get stuff done. Director Finn did mention the CTA quarterly meeting. Again, it was the first one doing the incubator concept, where we're trying to bring together carbon reduction ideas and projects with technical resources and grant resources and funders. And this was the first incubator for the quarterly meeting. We plan to do it every other quarterly meeting, so twice a year. We had almost 100 people show up, which was, I think, record attendance for that. On the left is presentations. We broke out into groups. And then on the right, you see Director Finn on the Community Solar Group. that the district did present as a potential project, and it was highlighted in the follow-up materials, and a lot of people expressed interest. The general manager and I went down to St. George, Utah. General manager was there to attend the full multi-day board meeting. I was asked to come and present on wildfire mitigation with the new Utah state law capping liability, which we're arguing for heavily in California and federally. They all have to do wildfire mitigations for the first time, and they're doing stuff. And obviously, we have 7 years of direct experience to share. So the general event on the left, Mason Baker, their CEO, talking with the chief of staff of the governor's office about policy in Utah and nationally, and then that was me presenting on wildfire preparedness, and they really wanted to focus on communication. The audience was largely elected officials from the UAMPS member systems. And then Federal Policy Forum was last week, and so Sunday through Thursday in Washington, D.C. Picture on the left is our conference, the one-day conference that was at the Willard Hotel, and about 70 people from NCPA, Northern California Power Agency, and NWPPA, Northwest Public Power Authority, attended that. Between the two organizations, it's 14 senators and over 100 Congress people. So we actually had access and influence with that combined group. It was the King's visit, so I would be remiss in not showing a picture. And you couldn't get anywhere near to anything, but they had everything lit up and the flags were everywhere. Picture on the right is Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and the rules and regulations are up on the back wall there. No, but it's very technical, and we met with all 5 commissioners' office and a few of the technical offices. Chief of the Forest Service spoke with us. Chief of Interior, we had very high-level contacts and information. And then Tuesday through Thursday was on the Hill lobbying. So on the left was Senator Schiff's office, I believe, and I was asked to lead the wildfire liability portion of that meeting. We then met with Senator Padilla's office, Kylie's office, Cantwell's office, and a few others. Wildfire liability, a major topic, pole attach. For telecom, because there was HR 2249 that was going to bypass our engineering review on pole attach, and so rallied around that. So good visit, lots of information and collaboration and joint action. Thank you. Thanks, Stephen.
Good evening. Excuse me. Good evening, President Laliotis, members of the board. Mike Salmon, CFO. Unfortunately, this part of the presentation does not have a lot of fancy pictures. I'll work on that for the next one. But it shall be riveting. Nonetheless, this is last month's customer service score. It's excellent score on how satisfied with your experience. That's almost 80% extremely satisfied, 23 respondents. How much time did it take to address? Kind of eye of the beholder, but overall pretty good scores there. Reason for your service call is mixed. Water leaks continue to pop up, and billing questions and payment questions are dominate typically each month. This is our billing activity for January, February, and March. 11.6 million in electric and almost 5 million in water. Account growth is at just under 0.5% year to date. Water gallons average per account per month of billed of 3,600 gallons is down a little over 4% to last year and down 4.1 to the 3-year average. On the electric side, we billed per account, this is average for all our account types, average per month was 1,100 kWh, which is down almost 4% to last year and down 6% to the 3-year average. This is driven in large part to the weather this spring, or winter, spring, I'm not sure what to call it, but January, February, March, Q1. So temperature average was 38.3 for the quarter, which was up 15% to last year and up 24% to the 3-year average and up 21% to the 5-year average. Converting that to heating degree days, which I'm going to talk quickly about in a moment, converting that to heating degree days for the quarter were 2,403, which were down, inversely to the temperature. So heating degree days, how much you need to heat was down 16% to last year and down 22% to the 3-year average, 20% to the 5-year average. So we had a very mild first quarter weather-wise. So real quickly on heating degree days, I promise this is not anywhere close to Sadie, Katie, and Safety. This is much more straightforward, and it's one metric, not 3. But heating degree days are a measure used to estimate the energy needed to heat a building. It's an industry standard type thing, and it's typically set by EIA. The Energy Information Administration and other entities look at this at 65 degrees. So it's your baseline against 65 degrees. And in short, so if the temperature average for the day was 65, you would have 0 heating degree days. If the average was 64, you would have 1 heating degree day for that day, okay? And taking that at the top here on January 1st, the average temperature was 35 against that baseline of 65 degrees. That's 30 heating degree days. On day 2 of this year, January 2nd, the average temperature was 39 degrees versus a baseline of 65. So that's 26 heating degree days. And you just add those up, and it's a way of getting a standard measure in a unit of measure for whatever period you're looking at, a year, a quarter, a month, doesn't matter. You can have a benchmark, a standard to compare it against and understand your metric. And so for the quarter, 2,403, that's an average of about 27 heating degree days per day. And that compares against last year, 3-year average, and a 5-year average. And then I did, because this information is readily available through NOAA, the federal government's weather websites, and their monitoring, I did actually pull down 10 years, 11 years. So the 10-year average was right at the 5-year average. So again, to the 5-year average, we were down in heating degree days 20%, which on the very right in the small, you'll see January was down 8%, February down 12%, March down 40%. We all remember this March because it was recent and how spring it was. So what does that all mean? It just gives us a good understanding of the volatility due to weather, in particular during our winter months with respect to electricity, because our electricity is higher usage by our counts is higher in the winter months than the summer months. And so it allows us to normalize for heating degree days. And then we can see with time and analysis, we can see what, as an example, what is driving beyond just weather impact on our electricity usage. Things such as electrification. Just one application here. So moving on from heating degree days, the payment kiosk is being utilized. These are the metrics here. A little bit of a split there between cash and credit for a total of 83 for the quarter. Transactions, just over $17,000 transacted. Pretty much evenly spread between midweek and Saturday, Sunday. And then average time of day was between noon and 2. So people are on their lunch break or something and they don't want to come inside and they're just using the kiosk. And then our earliest time stamp was a 1 a.m. transaction, and our latest was right around 11:30 p.m. In general services facilities, busy with building security enhancements and vehicle procurements and fleet procurements. That's on your agenda later tonight. HQ, HVAC, PM, so that's heating, ventilation, and AC, air conditioning. And then PM, anytime you see that in the maintenance world, that's preventative maintenance. PM is preventative maintenance. So in HQ, headquarters, this building. Sorry for the acronyms. Another acronym, HAZWOPER. I think it's an acronym, but it's hazardous waste training. We did have that last month, and then various areas of project support. Vehicle maintenance, vehicle order specs. These are custom vehicles, as you know. A lot of the heavy-duty stuff we order, so it's no small task just to spec what we're trying to get from a specific vendor or vendors to bid on. The Prosser Heights well had a vehicle versus well building, or is it pump station? Okay, thank you. And we had a vehicle versus the building there, and so that's an insurance claim that we're working through. Smog and bid inspections, and then your mileages are there, pretty consistent, January, February, March. In accounting and finance world, we closed the month of March financial statements and issued the treasurer's report, which is on the agenda this evening. The 2025 audit is nearing completion, as well as the ACFR related to that. That's the #1 bestseller every year with relation to the district, a great read. And that'll be on the agenda next month for the board's presentation. And then the Grace Crossing agreement, I believe in November, that we had with a new developer fell off, walked. But there's a reset underway with a new prior developer. So one of the developers that fell off previously, approximately a year ago, is back in with full interest now that they know more about what they're getting into, and so we're working on a new agreement with legal and hope to present that to the board at next month's meeting for consideration. So keep on plugging. Work orders for the quarter, new construction was up a bit, and that uptick was due to development over on Wolverine Circle, which I believe is over near in the Pine Forest near the Alder Creek Middle School area. Panel upgrades and work orders closed were down and flat respectively. Purchase power is a big thing for us here at the district in the electric utility world. A little bit of an uptick compared to last year in our cost per megawatt hour. Our year-to-date March purchase volume was 46,000 megawatts, which was 3% less than last year, 9% less than the 3-year average. And of note, with respect to our sources through UAMPS, the Nebo natural gas plant is in a maintenance repair mode through June, July timeframe. And so that's going to place us a little bit more in the market exposure, which to date has been very favorable, but you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. But currently that's not costing us, that's actually saving us money, big picture. And with that, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Okay. Thanks, staff, for all department updates. We'll move on now to the consent calendar. We will be taking up all items except items 10 and 17, which will be taken up at a later date. Is there any public comment on the consent calendar tonight? All right, seeing none. Any director comments on the consent calendar tonight? All right. Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar
Second.
as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, seeing none, motion carries. Okay, we will move on to our first workshop of the night. Item 18, California Municipal Utilities Association Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Update. Stephen?
Good evening, President Laliotis, members of the board again. It's my pleasure to present this workshop item. I want to first introduce our guests and appreciate them driving up from Sacramento to be here in person. We have Derek Dolphy, the Senior Director of Energy for CMUA, Andrea Abergel, the Director of Water for CMUA, and Danielle Blassett, the CEO for CMUA. So their leadership has shown up, and we're looking forward to an informative, informational workshop on this. Here's some information on them. They represent 84 public-owned electric, water, and wastewater agencies, and they're active before the California legislature, government, governor's office, and various regulatory agencies that you hear about often up there. Their members provide water service to about 75% of Californians and electric service to 25% of the state. So they have a lot of reach in terms of access and impacts on regulations and laws that are being considered or implemented. And then the district has been a member for many years focused on the legislative and regulatory affairs in California. We also do a lot of member joint action with our sister utilities within CMUA. And then CMUA works closely with our other joint action groups, so the Northern California Power Agency, the Southern California Public Power Authority, the Association of California Water Agencies, and others. So there's really a lot of collaboration, and we tend to be active being electric and water in many different agencies, so it's good to see the coordination going there. And they are here tonight to present an informational workshop on the major electric and water legislative and regulatory proceedings under the way in Sacramento. And with that, I will pass it to Derek.
Thank you, Stephen, for that great introduction. Good evening, President Laliotis and members of the board. As introduced, my name is Derek Dolphy. I have the distinct pleasure of being the Senior Director of Energy for the California Municipal Utilities Association. So thank you all for inviting us to be here today, and I'm really excited to give this presentation. I will be switching back and forth with my colleague Andrea, so we're going to be doing a little bit of do-si-do here depending on the issue, but we do want to hear your questions, so we're going to give a roughly 20-minute presentation. We're going to cover all things energy, water, and then what we call water energy nexus, which means things that combined kind of all utilities, focusing on the utility as the whole. So we're going to go through all of those, and then, like I said, at the end of the presentation, we'd love to hear your comments and questions.
Derek, that button to the right will move you along.
There we go. All right. So I just went over the agenda there, and then we'll get to questions at the end. I think Stephen did a fantastic job, so thank you, Stephen. I was going to go into who we are and who we represent, but he's already covered that, so no need to talk about that. So first things first, I do want to talk a little bit about energy legislation. So as you may know, every year the legislature in Sacramento introduces roughly 2,000 bills. It's the permanent employment plan for Andrea and I as lobbyists in Sacramento. And so we track hundreds and hundreds of bills every year on your behalf, and we make sure that we are getting your feedback and then providing that feedback to the legislature in the form of opposing, supporting, seeking amendments on various pieces of legislation. There's a lot of bills out there right now. I'm not going to go into detail about all of them, but I'd be happy to take any questions if you'd like to ask me more questions about legislation. But there were two bills I wanted to mention that were very problematic, that through a lot of the advocacy that we've done and working with Stephen, we've been able to water them down. The first one's first is SB 1011 by Senator McNerney. This was a very sweeping bill when it was introduced in February. It was everything in the kitchen sink. It was essentially saying they wanted the CPUC for the electric corporations and the CEC for us as publicly owned electric utilities to pass comprehensive regulations related to AI and the workplace and utility operations. They wanted to regulate everything more powerful than a calculator. I'm serious. It was a very sweeping bill at the beginning, and it had a lot of requirements related to what technology we as a utility could use and having to get pre-approval from state regulators before that, doing beta testing for 18 months, etc. Very sweeping bill, very problematic. We had a wonderful presentation earlier today about Cloudfire and Gridware and all those technologies that you're using. All of that would have been included in this bill when it was originally introduced. So we vehemently opposed this bill. We worked quite a bit with the committee consultants in the legislature to oppose this bill. I'm happy to report that thanks to that advocacy, the bill has been watered down significantly. And now what the bill says is that right now it's still pending, so nothing is set in stone, but right now it says you as a publicly owned electric utility would need to pass a policy at your governing board that dictates how you want to use AI in your workplace. So it went from really, really bad to not terrible. The bill is now in what we call the Senate Appropriations Committee. It will be sitting on there until about mid-May, when we'll see if that bill will be advancing or not based off of the state costs. So more to come on this bill. Really happy to say that we were able to hit this bill hard and early to say this is extremely problematic. Do not tell us how to micromanage our grid, and let us, utilize all the tools available to make sure that we can do things like wildfire mitigation, wildfire hardening, et cetera. So really, that's a little bit of a success story about us being able to hear your feedback loud and clear and utilize that to make a bill a lot better. The other bill I want to mention is in a similar vein. This is SB 868 by Senator Weiner. This bill is talking about portable solar generation devices. These are things that are common in countries like Germany right now. They're not as common here in the United States. I think they're just kind of rolling out. But essentially what this bill was trying to do when it was originally introduced is say, all right, if you want to sell what they call balcony solar, so these are portable solar panels that you can move around. Usually you put them on your balcony, you could put them in your front or backyard, but they're not permanently affixed to your roof like traditional rooftop solar. They wanted, this bill was saying, we as the utility could not require any preconditions to customers utilizing this technology. We could not ask them to tell us when they're using it. We could not ask them to sign an interconnection agreement. We couldn't do an inspection or charge a fee for an inspection. Nothing. There was no coordination allowed whatsoever. And this technology, when the bill was originally introduced, did not have to comport necessarily with local and state electrical code and building code. So very sweeping bill yet again, another success story of us pushing back strongly saying, this technology really isn't rolled out yet. We have a lot of questions about how this technology will be used. And we as the utility need to be able to coordinate with our customers to know if they're using these generation devices. And God forbid, if somebody's using one of these devices and we have planned maintenance or an unplanned outage on a line, and this technology is backfeeding electricity onto the grid, that's a safety issue for our workers, and it's a safety issue for our grid infrastructure. So luckily, this bill has been watered down somewhat to where now this technology, for it to be used, has to comport with state and federal building code and electrical code, and we are now allowed to require that customers notify us that they're using this technology. So this bill is now going from something that was really problematic in our mind to being a little bit just of an annoying bill because they still don't allow us to do things like inspections or interconnection agreements. However, this bill, like I said with 1011, is also pending in the Appropriations Committee, so we will see the fate of this bill if this bill will move forward in about a week or so. So yet again, another great example of hearing the feedback from your staff loud and clear about, hey, this bill is problematic and here's why, and then us being able to work with our partners in the legislature to try and get the policy in a place that's a lot better for us. So on the regulatory side, a lot of things going on. Last year was a landmark year for passing big, meaty regulatory issues, and then this year now is all about implementation. So I know that you've probably talked quite a bit last year about AB 825. It was also called SB 540. This was the Pathways Initiative. It's around creating a Western grid, energy grid, so that we could buy and sell energy with our Western state partners. This was one of those bills where it should have sailed through last year with little fanfare, but of course the legislature likes to make things complicated, so we had to push really hard to get this through. But last year, luckily, we were able to pass AB 825, which authorized the California Independent Service Operator, CAISO, to now transfer control of the actual buying and selling market capacity for the grid to this regional organization. It's called the Western Market Government. It's called the ROE now. I can't remember what ROE stands for, but that's the new name of the organization. They're standing it up right now, and we're actually seeing a formation board being formed. They have an interim board to create the new board. They're hiring staff. They're incorporating. They have a headquarters. So a lot of things are moving forward with the Pathways Initiative. It's moving very rapidly. And now with CAISO announcing the launching of EDAM, the Extended Day Ahead Market, we're actually seeing in real time this Western energy market starting to stand up. So we're anticipating that this will be online and fully operational by 2028. Now there's a little bit of a power struggle, no pun intended, going on between what they call the ROE now and SPP Markets Plus, which is based in Arkansas. It's a competitive Western energy market grid. It's kind of southwestern, so there's a little bit of a Apple or Android going on right now. Which grid, which do you want to, as a utility, be connected to? Most of the balancing authorities in California have committed to EDAM, and so CAISO, so I imagine CAISO and now the RO will be the organization that most folks in California go with, but there are other folks like Bonneville up just north of us that have said that they would like to join SPP Markets Plus. So it'll be really interesting to see the rollout of that as it moves forward. The other thing I want to mention is Cap and Invest, which is a regulation. It kind of reminds me of Prince, the regulation formerly known as Cap and Trade. It is now called Cap and Invest. Don't ask me why they changed the name. And that is at the California Air Resources Board. A lot of things have been happening on this. They came out, well, last year with AB 1207, they reauthorized the program to go from 2030 to 2045. Now CARB is in the throes of actually putting out the language and then subsequently adopting at the end of May, according to them, the new regulations to implement them, extending the program from 2030 to 2045. So they released a proposal in January that was extremely problematic for us. This proposal would have dramatically decreased the amount of free allowances that public utilities across the state get, and that would have caused a direct benefit to customers to go away, and that could have resulted in things like rate increases or shutting down certain types of programs that are funded with the allowance auction proceeds that we participate in that market. So happy to say that we lobbied extremely hard with CARB to say that that is untenable. In an era of affordability, this is not the time to be able to take away our free allowances to help cover the cost of compliance with the program. So the regulations were updated. 15-day language was sent out April 16th. That has almost restored all of the allowances to the electric utilities, for publicly owned electric utilities. There are still some that are receiving less than they are now, but it's an increase from the proposal that was submitted in January. So everybody gained from January, but as the state of nature is now, some are still losing. I believe Truckee is actually making it out okay. Yeah, pretty neutral on it, but there are a few utilities that are actually losing some of those allowances. So there was a hearing in the legislature that I was at this morning where CARB talked about this. We as CMUA have submitted a comment letter talking about the challenges related to this, but just wanted to give folks a heads up that this is happening in real time, and CARB is stuck between a rock and a hard place. They have affordability on one hand and then the environmental goals on the other hand, and it's going to be very difficult to see how CARB gets out of this without someone in the stakeholder community being very upset with them. But they are slated to approve that regulation on May 28th. All right, with that, I'm going to take a breath and introduce my colleague, Andrea, who's going to talk a little bit about water. Thank you.
Good evening, President Liliotis and the rest of the board. As Derek introduced and Stephen introduced, my name is Andrea Abergel. I am the Director of Water at CMUA. Like Derek directs all the energy, I direct all the water. So your water is being flowed by my control. Just a little joke. So water-wise, I wanted to highlight just a few key things that we're seeing in the legislature. There is a lot going on, and I'm bringing these for particular reasons to show where we're going. And the first thing that I want to hit is the conversation about water affordability. For years, we've been seeing the conversation focus on how do we address household affordability, an individual home's ability to pay their water bill. And that we're seeing that conversation continue this year, but with an added flavor. In that we're turning our eyes towards how are we going to put money back in the pockets of the water utilities, the systems that are operating to then lower the price of delivering the water. So we have two bills that are currently sitting both in their respective appropriations on suspense, meaning they're going to be heard, like Derek mentioned, mid-May. SB 1125, which sets up the statewide program that would direct about $20 to the individual households that qualify for said program. The program would be administered through the State Water Board and then third-party providers that then automatically enroll customers in the state program and cut the check for the water utility to then apply to the customer accounts. This is something, not the first time that we're seeing this bill. There have been two other iterations of that exact same bill, and CMUA has worked tirelessly over the past several years to get the policy right. So I said the policy, right? That bill is just a policy bill. Where the second bill on this list, AB 2739, is taking care of the funding aspect. The prior year's iterations of that statewide low-income water rate affordability program that have been stopped because there has been no funding or a desire to fund such a program, because the projected cost is about $500 million to $1 billion to set up the program and then to continue working on it with the administrative costs for the water board and for the actual money out the door to customers. So AB 2739 is a bill that is sponsored actually by a couple of water agencies. It sets up a trust. The trust is to fund two things. It's funding the statewide assistance program, and it is directing money for regional infrastructure programs or projects. So that is an effort to move the conversation in the direction that we all should be moving towards, which is we need to address the household affordability program problem, but we also need to address the system affordability problem. So we continue to be very actively engaged. We're supporting both bills. We're hoping that they make it through the legislature this year. This is the first time that we've been able to support a statewide program, and we've been working really well with our environmental justice partners that are sponsoring the first of those bills. The other two bills that I want to bring up, we've been in opposition to, but I want to cut to the chase and say both bills are not moving forward, which is great. AB 2013 is a bill which you would assume would be an energy bill because it deals with very high fire risk areas and preparedness for wildfire, but this is a water bill. And what we're seeing in the legislature this year is due to recent fires, LA, et cetera, and the running out of water and just the liability question for water utilities, we're seeing more of a focus on how do we make sure that water suppliers are also preparing for wildfires. This bill that I'm presenting right now is an example of a bad bill that tried to attack that problem. It would have required water systems that serve more than 100 customers, so pretty much everyone, to create a new disaster preparedness plan to indicate things such as how many wells do you have? Where are they? What do you have backup energy generation? What are your connections? So there we had a lot of problems with this bill. The transparency for the transparency and the protection of private information that should not be made publicly available. It was wanting to have that information to the County Board of Supervisors, and it wasn't really reflective of a planning document. It was reflective of, does a water system have enough water to fight fire? And the problem with that is that a water system is actually not designed to fight these wildfires. And that was the key issue that we saw with the LA fires. So we, along with our fellow associations, have been educating the legislature this whole year and continue to educate that water systems are designed specifically. The hydrants have specific gallons per second requirements that they have to meet, and there's only so much water pressure in your systems to then fight the wildfires, and you cannot be then held liable for that, which is another bill that I'm not mentioning here, but a solution that we are supportive of, which is kind of recognizing the state of play there. And then lastly, on the water legislation, I wanted to mention AB 2630, that which we had opposed, again, did not move forward, failed the policy committee. And I am mentioning this bill not because it applies directly to your utility, but this is an example of targeted measures that the legislature is taking to overcome or upend the Administrative Procedures Act, which regulates and says every regulatory action has to go through proper public process participation, involvement, and is then reviewed by a separate independent office, the Office of Administrative Law. So this bill had proposed a particular regulation for water rights measurement and reporting to bypass that what we call the OAL process and instead be adopted by emergency regulations, which tells you that you would have been liable and required to comply with certain requirements that are passed within a matter of days, if possible, and within your compliance timeline would have been maybe, weeks or so later. And that poses a problem because a lot of these requirements that are passed within the regulatory bodies, the State Water Board predominantly, they do require a lot of engagement, activity, costs. Right, so when we're talking about affordability, the OAL process is necessary because you're determining economic feasibility in addition to viability. And so when we talk about contaminants, which I'll talk about in just a second, under the regulatory component, you can't do that during an emergency regulation. So again, we've been spending a lot of time educating the legislature about that, and this isn't the first crack. Everyone wants an exception or to be exempt from APA, but if we're all looking for an exemption, then maybe the problem is the APA itself, not our burden to solve today. So that is the legislative side, and I will say our colleague, Megan Murphy, who works on water regulatory, could not make it today. She lives in the Bay Area, so it would have been a very long drive, but she's given me some good notes for the water regulatory. This was my job, but now I've completely forgotten about it. So the first thing that she wanted to highlight is making conservation a California way of life. You heard Stephen talk about the rollout for your communications. What is continuing on in the regulatory world is the Department of Water Resources is conducting a study on the SB 1157 indoor residential water use that assesses whether what the impacts of the current requirement, 42 gallons per day per capita, that's the 2030 current requirement target, what are the impacts on water, wastewater, and recycled systems. They have been hosting quarterly meetings and soliciting input from working groups, technical advisory panels, and the public. And there will be an opportunity to weigh in on the draft technical memos soon. And CMUA has an internal work group that meets regularly to discuss the study and provide input. And this is something that Megan has been focusing a lot of her attention on and working collaboratively with one of our other sister associations, the California Association of Sanitation Agencies, CASA. And lastly, in 2025, CMUA succeeded at reducing the required water loss leak registry data, also mandated by the Making Conservation in California Way of Life regulation, making several data input optional and less burdensome for its members. And the other item that we have to cover here on water regulatory is the under water quality, the 2026 State Water Board drinking water priorities. Every year, the Water Board around March releases its priorities for the year on their drinking water division, what they're going to be working on. For the past couple years, their number one priority was the maximum contaminant level for PFAS, the forever chemical. I'm sure you've heard of it. And we do know that here at Truckee Donner, you're particularly interested in arsenic, and we're happy to report that that has dropped way to the bottom of the list. So for years, I mentioned they're focusing on PFAS. They take a long time to do regulatory actions. It's going to be a while before they even get to PFAS MCLs in California because they need to go through a process by which the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, I think, OEHA, they develop a public health goal for another one of the PFAS contaminants, and then they're going to do a regulatory bundle together. So the state is waiting for the public health goal revision before they're going to do the arsenic work, because there's a federal public health goal for arsenic that they're looking for, and the federal efforts to reduce arsenic in food may affect relative source contribution. But CMUA is going to continue to monitor the state's progress on their drinking water priorities, and we'll advocate for updates on behalf of our members. If you have questions about the regulatory, I will do my best. One thing that's not on the slide that I do want to mention is that CMUA last year sponsored a bill, SB 72, which was to modernize the California Water Plan. It's a way that the Department of Water Resources reviews and assesses that we have enough water to meet all needs, all beneficial uses of water, and that is undergoing its implementation right now through DWR, and we're involved at the advisory committee level. We have a representative, and it's moving, it's trucking. So we're happy about that. So our last little bucket of information here is what Derek called the water energy nexus, right? Where water and energy meet, things that impact all of our members rather equally. I'm going to handle the legislative. I'll let Derek handle the regulatory. A bill that I wanted to mention that we are opposed to is AB 1881, and some measures that we've seen this legislative year, are really having to do with tribes and more protections for tribes, which the merit of which we don't question, but the impacts of how these bills are moving could negatively impact the operations of utilities and our local governments predominantly. So this bill would prohibit a governmental agency from substantially burdening a California Indian or California Native American tribe exercise of religious beliefs or spiritual practices on state public lands. And it has an important caveat in that a tribe or Native American or an California Indian can halt projects for mentioning, and the burden would then be on the governmental agency to prove that their project does not burden the religious belief or sacred sites. So this bill, sitting in Assembly Appropriations, has been amended significantly to just be state public lands, which in effect is an attempt to write out local governments and just make it a state government. But that definition of state public lands we're still working on. So we remain opposed for that reason, and we are working with a big group of folks to work through that. A couple of other bills, I'm going to take the next two together because they're related to housing. This is something that has reached our CMUA's priority list for Water Energy Nexus. The legislature has wanted to fast track housing developments, residential and commercial, and in doing so, there's some misinformation as to the fees that are assessed by utilities to get connected, the impact of said project, or the actual cost of providing the services, and there's a misinformation on the public agency or local government's ability to stamp of approval or what their decision-making level is. So these two bills, AB 1196 and SB 1036, we have been successful in negotiating language out so we are not impacted, but the first of which put shot clocks and requirements on originally public electric utilities, PUDs specifically, IOUs, and did impact some water utilities such as yourselves, to approve applications for accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units above and in front of, and prioritize them ahead of other projects. And that bill, we were able to narrow down to only the IOUs, which makes it not our problem for right now. And then SB 1036 proposed a offset of an impact fee for developments that were going to be taking a site and redeveloping it to a bigger use. And it was written in to impact water and sewer connections. And we were able to successfully negotiate that out to make sure that our fees that we need to assess are assessed. So they are not, and they cannot be borne by the customer. And lastly, a bill that we have been happy to support is SB 1330. It is a expanded protection on assault and battery on utility workers. You mentioned your crews out, and we're doing a lot of work. We know a lot of our members have crews every day doing work, and we've heard tons of stories of crews and individual workers trapped in homes because customers wouldn't let them leave, physically assaulted, verbally assaulted, and this is a measure to increase the penalties for those victims, specifically for utility workers. I will hand it back over to Derek.
All right, bringing us home. I could probably spend about 2 or 3 days talking about these topics, but for the sake of time, I'll be very brief. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. There's a lot going on in the water energy nexus category. One of the things I'll mention is the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation, which I know you all have probably heard ad nauseum about. I just have to give a shout out to Stephen for being one of the best and most vocal and passionate members of ours talking about this and really representing you guys quite well. So Stephen's done a great job of relaying that feedback to us and really helping inform our advocacy on that. Just a quick update. They've submitted 15-day language, which the comment period is closed. We submit comments on April 17th related to the last round of amendments to this. It's still problematic. There were, a couple, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, right? There were things that they addressed that we asked them to, and then they introduced a lot more ambiguity and a lot more uncertainty in the 15-day language. We anticipate that it will be approved. CARB does not need to vote on this again. They deferred the final package to the executive officer, so this will not be brought before the full CARB board for another vote to be approved. This will just be approved administratively. We have asked CARB to do another round, open the regulations up again in 2 years to make sure that we can say these regulations are unimplementable and we need to change them. We'll see if CARB listens to our impassioned plea there. On the wildfire liability report, SB 254, there's been a lot of discussion and debate on this in the legislature. This is a report that the California Earthquake Authority put together due to statutory direction at the end of last year. This report came out on April 7th. What it said was we need to change the status quo on wildfire liability, and here are 3 big pathways on how to do that. One pathway was focusing on community-level hardening. One pathway was on reforming wildfire liability, and the other pathway was about state-backed insurance. Like I said, I could spend a whole day talking about this, so I will not go into detail other than saying it's a huge priority for us at CMUA to make sure that the legislature understands if they choose to move forward on this, which we are encouraging them to move forward on wildfire liability reform for utilities, how to do it, and to make sure that we, as publicly owned electric utilities, are separate and distinct from the investor-owned utilities because of our size, our scale, and how we're governed is very different. And we want to make sure that any sort of changes make sense for us and aren't a one-size-fits-all for our larger utility members, such as the investor-owned utilities. Lastly, on the wildfire utility general order, this is something that we've been working on for several years. Andrea worked on this starting in 2023, 2022. It's been a long-standing issue that the Water Board has put forward. It's a general order, not a regulation, so things are a little bit wonky on how the process goes. But really, this is their way to try and say that they want to manage how projects are done near, waters of the state. And so this could really affect your wildfire mitigation activities, right? Because they're saying not only is it in the water, but up to 50 feet onto the land, and trying to manage and tell folks how they can act in those areas. And given that you have your lake right here and you have a lot of wildfire risk, this is something we've worked a lot with Truckee staff to make sure that we are trying to advocate that this needs to make sense for us, and we cannot, at the expense of wildfire mitigation, only focus on water quality. We have to be able to do both. And so next steps are, this is estimated to be adopted mid-June. But we are continuing to seek amendments on that. So with that, our presentation's done.
You're done. Let me
All right, I'm
finish
done.
us out very quickly. That is the contact information, and we can share that, of course. There is no direct fiscal impact associated with this workshop item, and the recommendation is to receive this report and provide input and direction to staff and to CMUA. And with that, we'd be happy to take questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephen. Okay. Since this is a workshop, we will not be asking for public comment. We will move to the board. Questions? Jeff?
A lot of bills.
You have no idea.
Yeah. You mentioned it. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Yeah. So, and I guess the really rubber meets the road later on in May. Is that correct? You're working on these things in the Appropriations Committee, and then after, I guess, they come out in May, and that's when the legislature starts to vote and either approve or not approve.
What I would call is we're about to get to halftime in the legislative game, to use a sports analogy. So
okay.
all the bills are in there, what we call the first House Committee, Appropriations Committee, which means Senate bills are still in the Senate and the Assembly bills are still in the Assembly. They go to the Appropriations Committees. Those assess the cost to the state. If they get out of that, that's usually kind of a gauntlet where a lot of bills die because they cost money and the state says we have no money, we can't pay for it. If they make it out of that, they go to their respective House floors for their first, vote of the whole body, and then they switch houses. Then we do the whole process over again in the other house. So everything will be done by the end of August this year, and all those bills will be sent to Governor Newsom for his action. So this is, like I said, we're about to get to halftime, and then everything will cross houses, and we'll do it all over again and see which bills get to the governor's desk.
Got it. Well, thank you for sorting through them all and presenting what's important to us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Happy to do it.
Krista?
Definitely have just comments. I just think the work that you all do is so valuable. Representing smaller utilities on the ground are specific problems, particularly around things like educating the legislatures. I mean, like, we need education all the time. This is complicated things, and just the few bills that you pulled out to give us a little more information on why we support or oppose, for example, the SB 868 for the portable solar generation devices. I know that people in this community would be like, why are you opposed to that bill?
Right.
That, and have some anger around it. And it makes perfect sense when it's a safety issue. And so we need at least to be able to have the data of what you're doing and how you're doing it, and making sure that we're can use that information and help everybody in our territory, as well as not killing our linemen. Right? This is this is really serious issues, and things like being able to look at all of these from multiple points of view, and bringing in things like environmental justice. Like, we do really need to bring everybody in this state along with us on these transitions. And I think it's, as much as politics receives, not a lot of love, I still think it's the best way for us to resolve our differences and solve our problems. It's better than punching each other on the nose. So I appreciate you guys doing this day in and day out and explaining it and bringing the rest of us along. So thank you.
Thank you for the education. I thought that was really, really great. And as I was listening to your presentation about all the bills coming up, and I was thinking to myself, water conservation as a way of life, and then came the slide. I mean, it was just like perfect. Oh, because that's what we were talking about here, and that's kind of front and center, and then right into that water regulation. So I thought it was good. I don't have any questions, particular ones, so thank you for presenting what you did.
Yes, I'll echo my fellow board members' comments, and just continue to point out how valuable our membership is with agencies like yourselves. If everyone had 14 Stephen Poncelets, you guys might not be necessary, but
Wish we had 14 Stephen Ponce at CMUA. That would be great. Get a lot done.
Yes, no, you guys, as Jeff mentioned, really boots on the ground, really listening to the agencies and their concerns, and being able to project those into the legislative environment is extremely valuable, and super helpful to agencies like us and to elected boards who, we do our work in the public, but we can't always get into the weeds, and that's what you guys are there for. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
I'd like to add one comment, President Lotus. Thank you, team, again, for a great presentation this year. I may have missed it, but I wanted to give the board and the community a little bit of perspective on the amount of work CMUA takes on. So you and Andrea have highlighted some key initiatives and key bills that are, impactful to our community or our operations. But how many bills does your team track in a given legislative year?
Oh man, definitely in the hundreds, probably in the 500 range between the two of us. Yeah.
So there's a lot of analysis and outreach. They're very much connected to all the member agencies to get feedback from the 14 Ponceles in California. But it's a very interactive and supportive and collaborative process, not just with the other joint advocacy groups, but with each of their members. And so I wanted to just give some praise and kudos to the team there. The amount of work that they get accomplished, you'd think they'd have several floors of administrative building in Sacramento, and you're looking at a team that gets a lot done with very few individuals, but are passionate about their work. And so it goes beyond the 8 or 10 bills that we get presented and kind of prioritized. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. So thank you guys for your hard work, and particularly for public water and public power.
Thank you. Appreciate it. It means a lot. Thank you.
And thank you for the backstory on that. That's good.
They're going to hit the road. They have a
Yes.
long drive.
Of course.
So I'm going to walk them out.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. We will move on to item 19, Draft Urban Water Management Plan Workshop.
Good evening, President Aliotis, members of the board. This is workshop item number 19. Earlier this evening on the consent calendar, the board scheduled a public hearing to receive comment on the draft urban water management plan. With this item, I'm going to give a quick and brief summary of the document for the board's information. So the Urban Water Management Planning Act requires that all urban water suppliers prepare an urban water management plan and update it every 5 years. An urban water supplier is a supplier either publicly or privately owned, providing water for municipal purposes, either directly or indirectly, to more than 3,000 customers, or supplying more than 3,000 acre-feet of water annually. The district qualifies on both counts. We have about 3,800 water system customers, and we'll get into the acre-feet number a little later on. The purpose of the Urban Water Management Plan is to enable water suppliers long-term resource planning and ensure that adequate water supplies are available to meet existing and future needs. And it requires coordination and communication with the local land use planning agencies. In our case, that is the town of Truckee covers the great majority of our service territory, but we do have small portions that do run into Placer County as well. Our current urban water management plan was adopted on June 2nd of 2021, and per the regulations, we are required to adopt and submit the updated urban water management plan no later than July 2026 of this year. Preparation of the urban water management plan is exempt from CEQA, but we are required to hold a public hearing, which again the board just scheduled through the consent calendar. So the draft document consists of 8 sections plus an appendices. I'm going to briefly give an outline on what's in each section. And there are some mandatory topics for discussion that are described in the document. Some of them are not necessarily relevant to the district. One of the things, there's a very brief discussion in there about desalination. Obviously not really relevant to us, but things of that nature, they're just, the code says we have to discuss it briefly. So, Section 1 is the introduction. We go through and describe that the Urban Water Management Plan applies only to the Truckee water system. Hirschdale is a very small system, and it's basically excluded from any of the discussion. We have a brief overview of the document. There's a review of public participation requirements. There's a discussion of interagency coordination. That is mainly focused on the management of the Martis Valley groundwater basin with our partner agencies. And then finishes up with a discussion of the plan adoption. Section 2 gives a description of the water system service area, a brief description of our history, starting with the private water companies back in the 1920s, on through the merger and acquisition of the Donner Lake Water Company and the Glenshire Mutual Water System. We have some overview maps and a discussion of current and projected population within the service area. So shown here on the graph is historic and projected population. As you can see, we had a relatively steady growth from 1985 through to about 2010, relatively flat for the next 15 years through the present. And then we have projected growth moving forward in the future here. That growth projection is based on the Town of Truckee General Plan recently updated in 2023. And that anticipates a build-out permanent population of 23,200. Now, I think as everyone is aware, permanent population is not always a great predictor of actual water use, and we're all aware that the population on a given moment in town can vary greatly from that number. Section 3 gives us a description of our existing water system facilities, 10 active potable wells, 3 active non-potable water wells. We have 5 inactive wells that are currently in a standby mode and will likely never be put back into service, but they have not been officially abandoned per the state requirements, so they're considered inactive. We have 26 pumping stations, 36 storage tanks, again, 33 active, 3 inactive, 41 control valve stations, and about 230 miles of mainline pipe. Section 4 gives us a description of system water usage. Excuse me. For 2025, the average day demand was just over 3.6 million gallons per day. Our maximum day of demand was just under 7 million gallons per day, which happened around July 4th of that year. We have a projected water usage in 5-year increments given in this section, and we also discussed the build-out water usage projection, which is 7.7 million average day and 14.26 maximum day, which is essentially double from where we are right now. Here we have a graph of our historic potable water usage. You can see that we actually peaked in the year 2007, and since that time, the maximum day demand has been on a general decline, and that's the red line. The blue line is the average day demand, and you can see that that has essentially been flat for the past 10 years. Couple things to consider as you look at this graph. The big jump that happens around the 2002-2003 timeframe, that is the merger with Glenshire Mutual and Donner Lake Water Company. So we brought a significant number of customers into the system at that time. And then starting in 2007, and that steep downward movement there for a few years. A couple things to think about in that arena. One was the construction of the fiberboard irrigation well. So that took a good chunk of potable water usage off the system onto the separate irrigation wells. That's part of that decline. We also had a significant ramping up of our pipeline replacement program during that time frame, and that is a significant driver as well, continuing the downward trend of overall water usage. Another thing to think about is in that 2009, 2010 neighborhood, we also had a good chunk of our water meter installation occurring and transitioning from unmetered rates to metered rates for our residential customers. So that also does impact that downward trend that we see on the maximum day. Again, a recap here of 2025 potable water usage. You can see that we've got just under 13,000 accounts in the single-family residential category. That's out of the total of 13,760 and change. So the great majority of our customers fall into that category. Those customers use about half the water, and we do have a significant percentage of water that does fall into the non-revenue category. Also in Section 4, there's a brief discussion of recycled water. Again, that discussion is required by the state. Recycled water will not be used locally due to some conditions that are within the Truckee River Operating Agreement. In addition to that, we do have adequate groundwater supplies within the Martis Valley Groundwater Basin through build-out, so we don't need to seek that additional water supply that many other locations within the state of California do need. There's also a discussion of non-revenue water, a discussion of water loss performance standards. That falls back to the conservation as a way of life legislation that we've discussed a little bit this evening. And there's a discussion of water demand for low-income housing. Again, that last item is a required discussion per the state. Section 5 deals with compliance with the Water Conservation Act of 2009, which is also known as SB X7-7. That legislation required that the district reduce urban water, statewide reduction of urban water usage of 20% by the year 2020. A brief summary of the calculations are here. The district achieved a 31% reduction, so we are in compliance with that legislation. Section 6 gives a discussion of our water system supplies. Our current water system supply is groundwater from the Martis Valley Groundwater Basin. There's a number of studies that have been done on the basin over the years. They've determined that we have a sustainable yield of at least 22,000 acre-feet per year, and there's a total storage volume within the basin of at least 484,000 acre-feet per acre-feet. And the district, surface water from Donner Lake was used in the past by the Donner Lake Water Company, and the district does maintain 990 acre-feet per year of water rights that we acquired through that merger. At this point, we do not envision using those water rights in the near term. Perhaps that's something that may be revisited in the future, but it's not within the near-term program. For 2025, withdrawals from the groundwater basin, the district used almost 4,800 acre-feet. So again, we did exceed that 3,000 threshold discussed earlier. We had other water users within the basin. We're estimating that at over 2,300 acre-feet. Again, well below the sustainable yield of 22,000. Build-out projections, about 9,400 for the district, about 3,800 for the other users, and that totals 60% of the sustainable yield. So based on what you just saw on the previous slide, additional water supplies will not be needed. We will need additional well capacity. So we will at some point in the future need to drill another well, perhaps two. in terms of new capacity into the system. The timing of that will be based on the actual increase in water usage, with growth occurring within your community. And the other thing that will come up at some point in the future is that some of our existing wells will be reaching the end of their useful life and may need replacement. In addition, there is a discussion of water system energy usage, which is also a required item from the state. Section 7 discusses water shortage contingency planning. The district's existing water shortage contingency plan was adopted in 2021 with the previous revision to the urban water management plan. We do not see that any revisions to that water shortage contingency plan are necessary. As kind of discussed previously, the district has sufficient water supply and storage within the groundwater basin to withstand a multiple-year drought. And we envision that the most likely cause of a water shortage would be relatively short-term due to a failure of a critical facility as the result of a fire, earthquake, or something of a similar nature. Section 7 discusses the potential financial impact of a water shortage, and there is some additional information in there which is required by the California Water Code. Section 8 discusses water demand management measures. You could think of these as water conservation measures as well. We've got a few items here that we discussed: water waste prevention ordinance, discussion of water metering, discussion of water rates and conservation pricing, public education and outreach, the district's operational programs to assess and manage distribution system losses, water conservation program staffing, other demand management measures, and finally a brief review of demand management measure effectiveness. There's a number of appendices attached to the document. Basically, it's copies of other documents that are referenced: the Urban Water Management Planning Act, the Water Conservation Act of 2009. We have a copy of the recently adopted Martis Valley Groundwater Management Plan in there, a copy of Ordinance 2021-01, which is the Water Shortage Contingency Plan. The final document will include a copy of a resolution to be adopted by the board we're hopeful at the next meeting, which officially adopts the final urban water management plan. There's some documentation regarding public agency notification, which again is our partner agencies: Town of Truckee, Placer County, Nevada County, Placer County Water Agency, North Star CSD, those types of agencies. And we have the annual water audits for the last 10 years, also included as an appendix. So in terms of fiscal impact, there is no direct fiscal impact associated with this item. And the recommendation before the board is to receive this report and provide comment.
Thanks, Neil. Okay. As this is a workshop item, we will not be taking public comment. I'll move to director comments or questions. Jeff?
Neil, I couldn't find it in the document, but if you could give us a quick recap of the non-revenue water, please.
Okay, so if you want to think about a mass balance of the water system, so we know how much water gets pumped out of the ground by our wells. We know how much water goes through the meters to our customers. There's a differential there. And pretty much always, the water in does not equal the water going out to the customers. There's some difference. And so we as the district are not getting revenue for that water because it's not going to a customer. Customer's not being billed for that water. Now, non-revenue water basically consists of two categories. You could think of it as authorized, unmetered usage is one category, and that would be things such as firefighting. Fire department goes out, puts out a fire. We don't have a meter on that fire hydrant. So that's one thing. Fire department also does a significant amount of training throughout the calendar year. They're pulling water for those purposes. Other uses would be internal operational programs such as flushing to maintain water quality. At certain parts of the system, we have some dead ends that the water can tend to get a little stale. So we do flush some water out of those to make sure that the water quality stays good. Other things might be flushing associated with new construction and disinfection activities. So we have things that are authorized and intended, but they're not metered. We also have unintended use, which is mainly leakage in the distribution system, but you would also have metering errors that would fall into that category. So the meters are never 100% accurate if we took every single one in town. So any kind of meter error falls into that unintended category as well.
Wow, thank you.
On the meter error component, just wanted to add some additional clarification that the metering errors in the industry is referred to as an apparent loss. So the water may have been delivered to the customer, but it wasn't metered accurately. The kind of one of the engineering principles that in terms of metering, when meters get old and wear down, they don't get more accurate and over meter water, they get less accurate and under meter water. So I just want to make sure that we understand that as meter accuracy degrades, it's not billing the customer more water, it's actually billing them less than they actually use. So it looks like from a revenue standpoint, that water didn't get delivered. So one of the things the water department took on a few years ago was to bring on and hire a water service technician specialist who's specifically addressing meter testing and meter accuracy out in the field. So that's part of what our multi-layered effort is in reducing water loss, is not the actual leaks, which we're working diligently on, but keeping up with meter accuracy so that we're not having that apparent loss where it wasn't metered accurately.
Neil, do we have a well replacement master plan and reserve account that incorporates existing wells and the potential for the 2 new proposed ones down the road?
So we do have a capital reserve, which I believe Director Salmons touched on numerous occasions. So in the way to think about a well would be two parts to it. One of it would be the actual pumping equipment. So you've got a pump, you've got a motor that are withdrawing the water out of the ground. The second thing to think about is the actual hole in the ground that goes down. Some of our wells go, I believe our deepest is 1,200 feet deep. So in terms of the motor and pump, yes, we are actively dealing with those. We monitor the performance of both of those weekly, if not daily. As we touched on earlier, we went with well 20. We're out there. The well equipment on that well was just replaced. So yes, in terms of the actual equipment, we are very much on top of that and very much monitoring it. The other thing that does happen with wells is over time, you basically have a piece of steel going down into the ground, again, upwards of 1,200 feet in some cases. So we do go through, we do cleaning on those wells periodically. Eventually, you can't clean it anymore. The well has just, the column has rusted out. Within that steel column, there are holes in the steel that allow the water to move in from the underground formations into the vertical pipe. Eventually, you will have to deal with essentially replacing it. That's not something that we've had to deal with in the past, to be honest. None of our wells really qualify as a replacement for something that was existing prior. But it is something we are monitoring, and we do monitor the performance of them daily, if not weekly.
Just to further my question, do we have the resources if 2 or 3 wells went out at the same time?
So if we, let me go back to the graph here.
On July 4th.
Yeah. Well, no. Well, okay. So if we look at this graph here, okay, so we can see our maximum day, the red line, is we're currently around 7 million gallons per day. Our historic peak was over 14. So right now, we definitely have sufficient capacity such that if any one of our 10 wells was out of service, we can easily manage that. Now, if you're going to tell me that the 3 biggest wells in town failed on the same day, then we may very well be looking at implementing some component of our water shortage contingency plan. But again, if we think about the likely nature of a failure, I do not anticipate 3 holes in the ground to fail simultaneously. I think that's just beyond something that would even be, something you could think about. In terms of having one single well out of service due to a mechanical failure, yes, we definitely have sufficient capacity to handle that right now. We have existing contracts for motor maintenance and pump maintenance. I think as was mentioned, the last one was out for a week. So we can turn things around relatively quickly for mechanical failures. And we do have the ability within the water shortage contingency plan to take steps to reduce water demand in emergency situations. Most likely we would be starting with irrigation customers, things of that nature, trying to maintain water service to the more critical needs in town, such as the schools and the hospitals.
I think it's important to note, as to kind of summarize what Neil just pointed out, that's an exercise in risk assessment and having redundancy plans for the water utility operations. We do maintain, as we talked about in the budget process and the capital improvement plan process, we do maintain a capital reserve for emergency situations, such as what you pointed out. We're continuing to build that reserve capacity over time. That's what we discussed, an important discussion and part of the water rate discussion, water rate development, water rate schedule for the next 5 years, was to replenish those reserves so they're more sufficient. Another key component, as Neil pointed out, we often cases aren't running all of our wells, so we have additional production capacity beyond our daily and peak demand. And we have the backup, as he pointed out, the water shortage contingency plan in extreme emergencies would be something where we could put a stop on our prohibition of unnecessary water use that would help reduce the demand, which we often see in the summertime is highly dependent on the level of outdoor irrigation that's done in our community. So the water shortage contingency plan would essentially reduce water usage to health and safety. And then we'd have opportunities to come in with our reserve balances, get board approval to replace or repair something. In most cases where you have well failures, they're mechanical failures, and we could quickly get those replaced and put back in operational order relatively quickly.
I'll add that the industry standard on sort of identifying risk is what they call firm capacity, which basically you want to plan for your largest source of water being out of service, and are you able to sustain your system with that? That's sort of the general planning tool, I think, that's in the industry for sort of trying to make sure you have excess capacity in the event of an emergency. Krista.
Questions about, we have inactive wells in our system, but they're not abandoned wells. What's the difference between inactive and abandoned?
So within the state regulations, there's a description of what steps you have to take to officially abandon a well. And that involves essentially pumping concrete down. You're pulling the mechanical equipment, you're pulling the pump, you're pulling the motor, you're pumping concrete down that vertical pipe down into the ground, and then you're physically cutting and severing that pipe probably 5 feet below the ground surface. So there's no way to get contaminants down into the aquifer, and there's no way to access it at the surface. So those 5 wells that we discussed, we're not actively using them, but we have not taken those steps.
Would we actively use them again, or have they deteriorated? There's a reason why they're inactive.
For the most part, let me go back to that. Okay, right there, I'm sorry. Okay, so pretty much the first 4 of those wells, the B well, the Biltz well, and the Bingham Place well are very small capacity in that it's with all the regulatory and testing requirements we have associated with each of our wells, the amount of water we get out of them, it's really not worth it for us to operate those. The A well, we operated probably up until the mid-2000s as a potable water well, maybe even past that. We were having some issues with water quality and air entrainment with that well, customer complaints, and we've basically stopped using that one because to ameliorate that issue. Southside number 2 is a shallow well, and that was declared to be under the influence of surface water, which would require that we treat that well as surface water, which none of our other wells are. Our standard treatment process is essentially a little bit of chlorine for disinfection purposes. For the Southside well, for us to use that, we would have to do some filtration and do some other water treatment methodologies in order to use that. And again, that is not a very high volume producer, so it's not worth the expense and the investment to bring that back online.
Okay, so we're just ignoring them because it's expensive for us to do anything in any direction.
Essentially, yes.
Okay, which totally, I'm down with that. Got lots of things in my life that are that way.
On the A and B wells, I think another kind of note of information: A and B wells were acquired through the development of Tahoe Donner. They're wells originally constructed to serve that community, and when the district assumed responsibility for the water system in Tahoe Donner, that was part of it. Both those wells, they were really very, as Neil pointed out, very ineffective and small producers, and they're not worth the investment for redevelopment or rebuilding because of where they're located. It's one of the reasons why Tahoe Donner, was necessary for them to join the larger system and seek other water resources in the basin. And then the Southside well was very close and adjacent to the wetlands and the springs over across from the rodeo grounds. So that's the reason why it's not worth investment. Sometimes we can do some testing and maybe redevelop a well, re-drill it, but those particular wells don't really have any value for our community moving forward.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you both for those answers. And I just want to kind of as the big picture in our conservation as a way of life and the fact that we have been reducing, I mean, we see it every month in our month-over-month and 5-year average water use. We are decreasing our usage about 1% year over year, even about that, less, a little more, a little less. and we have goals that the state of California is setting. What is the timeline for like conservation as a way of life, and we're reducing our usage 1% year over year. So obviously it'd be 100 years, and we'd be using zero water. Just doesn't seem like. Is there what is the like? I think in our last presenters, 42 gallons a day per capita in California, excuse me, not capita, by 2030, which seems like not a lot of water for a person to use a day. 42. What are our per person per day? Granted that we have a population that really fluctuates. In our biggest day, we probably have 25,000 people using the one, and that's when we use 7 million.
That's in Tahoe Donner only.
Right, just in Tahoe Donner. Like, what is our, my math isn't good in my head today, so 7 million divided by a rough estimate, 23,000 people. But on a kind of a normal day, like a day here in April, when we have our 16,000 customers hookups using our 6.9 million gallons a day, how much are we using a day as one person? Do we have that? Is that even possible to calculate?
Well, a couple of points of clarification. So I believe that the numbers you're looking at there, the 42 and the 55, I believe that's indoor usage only.
Yes.
Correct? Right. So that's going to be laundry, showers, toileting, making dinner, things of that nature. That's not counting outdoor use.
Right.
Okay. So that 7 million gallons per day, that maximum day of demand, that for the last 5 to 10 years, that has been essentially July 4th weekend. So you have two things going on then. I think as everybody knows, you have a significant increase in population in town. Okay. The other thing that you do have is you do have significant irrigation connected to the potable water system. Okay. The parks, the ball fields over here at the school district, the ball fields right behind us at Meadow Park, any irrigation that's happening at any individual residence or business or anything of that nature. So we essentially see a tripling of water usage from, let's call it midwinter, to that peak summer use, where if we go to a Wednesday in the middle of January, let's say, and there's no outdoor irrigation use happening at all because there's 10 feet of snow on the ground, we're around 2 to 2.5 million gallons a day. And then we approach 7 on that maximum day of demand. So that the 2 is really down where you should be thinking about the comparing to your 42 or your 55 gallons per person per day. And then, yes, you know, the number of people in town on any given day is a wild card. Right. You know, and we can actually look at, even through the wintertime, we can see variations midweek versus weekends. You know, that definitely shows up in the water usage.
So a winter number, 2.2 million gallons a day divided by our
population is a more realistic,
number.
Analogy to those conservation as a way of life type of requirements.
So that's because I think a lot of our folks
Our staff has been working diligently with the state of California on this very issue. And as Neil pointed out, there's a significant switch or difference between permanent population and occupancy at any given time of year. And so the total population per capita water usage is very problematic for our community because it's not reflective of what is being used or how many people are in our community. And so we've, since 2014, have been working with the state on trying to resolve that issue. We do see, as Neil pointed out, a tripling of water use in the summer. So the only baseline figures we have in terms of what our community uses, as you know, generally speaking, for internal use is during the winter, because you're not typically irrigating anything outside. And so in the winter months, this community's, you know, approaching that 55 gallons per minute per capita daily based on an estimate of how many people or how many users are in our community. In the summer, that's another issue. The regulation is not a peak or minimum calculation. It's a net calculation over a water year. And so the compliance period starts in 2027, and Chad and his team are working on making sure the district has a plan moving towards compliance. But, you know, as you pointed out, that it's nearly impossible for us to make a determination of what internal water use is in our community because you don't have a separate meter for your indoor usage and your outdoor usage. So Chad's been working with, Neil's been working with the State Water Board on how we'll meet compliance there and the pathway to compliance. But it's going to require a considerable effort by our community and our ratepayers. And it's going to require some education that Mr. Poncelet talked about with the conservation garden work and active communication with our community. That indoor water use reduction is going to be something that, you know, we have a mixed message where we have a rich water resource in the basin that can handle, you know, a sustainable yield that's 2 or 3 times the current usage, but there's a state mandate to reduce usage. So something we're working on in terms of communication and education.
Does there seem to be progress being made on the front with helping the state understand what our summer situation is? Like that we year-round homeowners are never going to be able to conserve enough water to make up for doubling our town size in the summertime.
Yeah, the challenge is, and I think we've made huge strides, and you know, advocating for and fighting for alternative calculations, not just permanent population, but you know, number of people per dwelling unit in your community. That's a different number than permanent population. You know, there's different estimates between 40 and 60% increases in population during holidays or winter months. So we've made some strides there. I think we can have Mr. Reed come back at a later date and talk about and give some updates on what our plan is in terms of compliance with this particular issue. But we're also faced against a regulatory framework that has been given a directive to come up with a regulation, and they tend to take broad, sweeping, generalized approach to regulatory framework in California. And absolutely, there's a different water environment, a different water resource issue in the Central Valley of California than there is on the east slope of the Sierra Nevada.
Yet another extremely complicated subject. Thank you very much for y'all's indulgence there. I'm good.
Excellent, thorough work. Thank you. I enjoyed reading what you presented in the plan, and I do have a couple questions. Build out. So there's population build out, and there are connection build outs. I mean, so do they match, and what % are we now from build out? The population, I did the math, so we're about 70% based on town's projections. But
Right. So if we go back to section 4 right here, where we're currently looking at essentially a doubling of where we are today to build out.
Okay.
Now, within that build out calculation, I would like to review some of the assumptions that go into that calculation. So that assumes that all of the vacant land in town is developed to the maximum extent possible as listed under current zoning and general plan land use. Now, I think you could argue historically that that doesn't always happen in some cases, but we really can't crystal ball, well, the planning department is going to come down and require this much open space on this particular parcel and things of that nature. So we're looking at, again, maximum development allowed on every single parcel. We're looking at no ADUs, although we know those are going to come, okay? We're also looking at no change in occupancy, although those things may occur both ways. A perfect example would be over here across from the Dairy Queen, the former CHP facility that's now turning into apartments. I think everyone can understand that those apartments are going to use quite a bit more water than the CHP facility did. So we have that to consider. And then we also assume that all existing development continues to use the same amount of water, basically infinitely into the future. So your particular residence, I don't know what I'll use my residence, okay? Family of 4, okay? That assumes that the usage in my home continues at the exact same level forever into the future. Now, could change. I've got 2 daughters off in college, okay? They're probably not coming back. Maybe I sell the house and a family of 6 moves in. Water usage goes up. Maybe somebody decides they're going to plant the garden or plant the lawn. I don't have either one of those. So there are variables that are going to impact this build-out projection both directions going into the future. This build-out projection, we recalculate it every 5 years as we do the urban water management plan every 5 years. So it's kind of a bit of a moving target, and we'll see the impact of things going forward. But right now, this is the best information we have, and it is based on, maximum development of what's out there, and it is considered conservative.
And about 10 years ago, there was a lot of concern about snowmaking. And does the community have enough water for snowmaking activities? And I was pleased to see through this plan that current golf courses as well as snowmaking is included, and there is enough. And correct me if I'm wrong, when I read this, that even if it didn't snow and didn't rain, we would have enough water for 36 years? Did I read that right?
Yes, in that
Or something
neighborhood.
like that?
If basically precipitation stopped, and so if we go back to right there, okay. Wrong one. Okay, so sustainable yield, 22,000 acre-feet per year. So that's basically the mass balance of the groundwater basin. 22,000 acre-feet coming in on the average annual basis due to precipitation. 484,000 in storage underground. And I believe right now, between the district and all the other water users, we're looking at, 8,000 right there currently. So yes, there is a very large amount of water underground compared to what is currently being used.
So healthy. So my last question is, because we have this healthy aquifer, water for our needs and our projected and build out into the future, is there any threat to that water from outside that as part of this plan or anything on the horizon? That's an asset, and I'm just sort of curious if.
As part of this plan, there's nothing that we can see that's a quote threat. The other thing to think about here is the Truckee River Operating Agreement, and I don't think that's really been presented to the board in quite a while. The Truckee River Operating Agreement and the parameters of that.
Yeah, I think it's important that we put some framework or context to, there's been several studies and publications that had, kind of anecdotal statements like you mentioned that if we didn't receive any precipitation for many years, the basin has sufficient water storage. Those are based on hydrologic studies that they themselves make a lot of assumptions. And it's based on the data that's available, as Neil's talking about, projection. So the 484,000 acre feet of storage is a hydrogeological calculation based on the size of the aquifer and the performance data that we see over many decades. The important part of this, and we presented this with the groundwater management plan, is that we as stewards of that resource continue to maintain and plan and monitor so that we're operating well below those margins. And we talk about sustainable yield. That's sustainable yield is to allow for dry season, wet seasons, for the restoration or recharge of that basin. So we're now operating under the expectation of catastrophic drought over many years, but we do have to consider that, through our data analysis of past data. In terms of threats to the basin, prolonged and extended droughts are a threat to any water basin. We have very robust storage, but it also, requires that you have access to it. Does that require additional well adjustments and more infrastructure and more treatment? There's all of those unknowns. In terms of threats, contamination is always a threat. CMUA just did a presentation on PFAS and, forever chemicals. It's something that, as stewards of that resource, we're always monitoring that and looking for those threats and how do we mitigate those. In terms of an urban water management plan, this report is assessing and projecting based on the information we have now. And that's why we update it every 5 years. If there's a new threat or a new trend, that would be incorporated in the next version of this plan. And that's why I think it's very important that this community, North Star included, Placer County Water Agency and Truckee Donner PUD, took on that groundwater management plan responsibility outside of the regulatory requirement, because this is an important resource to the economic and health of this community. And so we need to keep reevaluating these things every 5 years. Neil's projections are conservative so that we're not underestimating the financial need or the infrastructure needs for our community. So population projections, taking a lot of data from the town, also making our own assumptions based on the water trends that we see. I think real threats are contamination and, the ability to maintain our infrastructure in a responsible and reliable manner. And that goes back to that discussion of rates and investment in infrastructure that we're doing heavily here.
I think I was thinking threats as in other regions wanting our water.
So this is,
I think that was more the threat I was thinking of.
I apologize for that. This is an unadjudicated basin, meaning that there's no water master or court order on the amount of water that can be drawn, but it does have a Truckee River operating agreement that is approved through Congress federally that outlines and prescribes the amount of water, both surface water and groundwater, that can be drawn from the basin. As long as those thresholds are met, there aren't any prohibitions from other areas in the region drawing from the basin. We had some robust discussions 10 years ago about potentially Palisades in Olympic Valley in order to meet their demands, drilling a well in the Martis Valley Basin. So they do have, within the regulatory framework, they would be permitted to drill into the basin. There is a regulatory control framework through TROA on how much water can be drawn, both through surface water and groundwater resources. So that's to maintain that long-term health of the basin.
Thank you. Excellent work.
One other thing to mention there. One of the provisions of TROA prohibits export of water outside the Truckee River watershed. So the water locally, it has to stay within the Truckee River watershed. It can't be sent to Sacramento. It can't be sent to Los Angeles. It has to stay within this geographic area.
Thank you for that clarification. That's kind of where my question was going. Great work. Thank you.
Great. Krista, great. Happy you point out that the conundrum that vacation communities have faced with the whole conservation program since, 2014, the drought, when they first started implementing GPCD. It's just not fair. I mean, that's the bottom line. It's an inequity. It's been tried to be addressed at the state level so many times. I know I worked on it. I got to the point where I was so fed up because our numbers looked so horrible that, newspapers were singling us out because of our high GPCD, when in reality it was we're a vacation community. Our permanent population cannot be used as, the calculating, the variable of how much water use is, because it changes every day. So I know in Tahoe City, in the early days of the conservation reporting, we started using sewer flows to try and estimate about how many people were in town, on average during the month. And it helped our numbers, but there's a lot of variables in that, and it wasn't a great thing, but it was better than better than being treated as we were. But it's no different than advanced clean fleets, where a one-size-fits-all regulation just has different impacts to different utilities and different demographics. Just another reason why the CMUAs out there are working for us to try and get our small voice heard at a larger scale. So, Neil, great report. The urban water management plan every 5 years was something I dreaded to do, but it's just another box to check. But it required a lot of work. So appreciate your time and your knowledge and your explanations to us of some of the inner workings. Great job. All right. Last workshop. Discussion of the district's 2026 customer survey and strategic questions.
Good evening again, President Laliotis, members of the board. Pleasure to present the District Customer Survey Questions Workshop. District has periodically conducted formal customer surveys using research firms with expertise in developing and implementing meaningful and statistically valid customer surveys. Our last was done at the end of 2020 and then delivered in early 2021. Survey methodology was based on obtaining an error of plus or minus 5% with a confidence level of 95% for you statisticians in the audience and on TV. Survey methodology was based on that. We achieved that by inviting a cross-section of our customer bases to participate via phone interviews, online via email and text message, and by mail. They call that multi-mode. And it takes about 1,000 completed surveys to get 400 from the cross-section to represent our customer base to be statistically valid. That number won't change much from 5 years ago to today. Our population slightly increased, but largely the same. It is offered in both English and Spanish, and it's designed to maximize accuracy and reach while minimizing bias. The customer survey measured customer satisfaction, service priorities, communication preferences, and community expectations for the district's water and electric services. About 75%, 30 of the questions will repeat or be similar because they're consistent across the industry. They allow us to compare against other water utilities, and then they allow us to trend over time. Our number was this year, 5 years ago, it's this today. What does that mean? 25% of the questions were topical and timely for the time of that survey. And at the time of the survey, we were developing a strategic plan for the first time, and we were developing board strategic initiatives for the first time. So the questions were very focused on those primarily. The goal of the customer surveys was and is to provide clear, actionable data to guide decisions. So staff believed it was time to conduct the next customer survey and recommended using Probolsky Research again at the district's April 1st board meeting. Board took action to award a contract to Probolsky Research for the survey. Customer survey would occur this spring, soon, and would involve a process for reviewing and updating the survey questions. Final survey results would be brought back to the board in a public workshop, and the board did direct staff to bring back a workshop to discuss those strategic questions or topics, and that's what we're here for today. Staff worked internally to review, confirm the approximately 30 questions that would be repeated, and then reviewed the 10 strategic ones that could be updated or replaced with questions more, topics more topical today. And we did have a meeting with Probolsky Research and Adam to go over all the questions and plan for the survey and really get their professional input on, hey, no, that question is good and it's used across the industry for these reasons, or yeah, we could update that to something. Staff also offered to meet with each board member individually to discuss the survey and opportunities to include new strategic questions or topics that are topical for today, and I appreciate the responsiveness of each of the board members in having those conversations. Thank you. I'm going to kind of summarize what came out of all this activity. And, you know, our staff discussions, Probolsky Research, and in the individual board input. And the following topics were suggested as more topical for today. Updating water conservation, upcoming water conservation regulations. So we've talked a lot about that. I wrote kind of sample questions. The goal here is to take the topic that we want to learn about and then have a meeting with Probolsky Research and have them help us frame and design questions that fit with the survey methodology, fit with the survey, how the other questions are presented. So there'll be a step here. So we're really focused. So when I start, reading the questions, please just take them as conservation regulations, a big deal. We just talked about it a lot. Are customers aware? And if so, how can the district help them reduce water usage? Might be the type of question that we think is important. Renewable and carbon-free, there was a bunch of questions about 100% and 100% by 2027 and 100% against regulations. That initiative that started as 100% became net carbon reduction. And so renewable and carbon-free are still a very important topic, but you know, it didn't require or need the level it had before. So should the district continue to prioritize renewables and carbon-free resources? And if yes, how do customers feel about exceeding current mandates for renewables and carbon-free? Was kind of the topic that came out. Local generation. There's a lot of interest in community solar right now. There's always been interest in biomass. Batteries are gaining traction. So do you support the district pursuing a local generation project? Seems like an interesting question to ask. And then if so, are you interested in community solar, biomass, and or batteries to try to get a flavor for where their priorities are? The current board strategic initiatives. So we started with undergrounding and 100%, you know, and those morphed into net carbon reduction, service reliability and safety, local watershed stewardship, and broadband. And of the four, we've done a ton of work on broadband and really moved that initiative pretty far along, and the others continue to evolve as we move forward. So a statement, are you aware of the current board strategic initiatives? We'd list them out, and if so, what are your priorities? Might be one way to go at that. Net carbon reduction, again, that 100% is net carbon reduction, and net carbon reduction looks at not only the generation, but the usages, sequestration. There's a lot of ways. There's a lot of ways to go after the carbon issue, and so net carbon really hits both sides of that equation. So do you support the district's net carbon reduction board strategic initiative? And if so, what district carbon reduction programs would have the most benefit for you might be one way to frame that. And you could list out, do you want us to get more renewables and clean, or how about our facilities and our own emissions, or transportation, GHG? There's a lot of different ways to go at that, and so we could try to get more information. And then the district facility master plan. We've talked about it a lot here. The level of awareness and understanding in the community, we're in the early phases here. But one question, might be around the district's current HQ facilities. They've outlived their useful life, and we'd need to explain to them a little bit of why and where and how. But there's a facility master plan to address future needs, current and future, and this facility isn't meeting those needs. And the town of Truckee's general plan has us moving. So a question might be, do you support the district exploring land purchases and updating the facility master plan to consider relocating? Might be a way. That's a kind of loaded question without all the details, so we're struggling a bit with that one, but it's an important topic, and so, we put it up there. District role in economic development came up, and, I've always said that stable and competitive electric and water rates are bricks and mortar for economic development, but, how do we gauge our communities? And it really starts to get at the affordability issue that keeps coming up over and over again. So the district has, how can the district support economic development in a vibrant community? And that could be through competitive rates, improving reliability, increasing community safety, protecting water resources, net carbon reduction, and others. But it would get an idea of the community's priorities there. The district integrated resource plan is a very important thing. Another one that's very hard to explain and understand and really get meaningful information out of it. And yet, it guides a lot of what we do. So the district has an IRP to ensure that the district can supply reliable electric resources to meet customer demands while complying with environmental regulations. That's kind of the goals. How could the district help you reduce where and when you use electricity? That's the customer's role in the IRP. And so maybe we just drill down into that. And then wildfire safety, de-energization, preemptive power shutoff, PPS, the policy the board approved last year. Educate them a little bit about that and NV Energy and PSOM and that it's coming. And maybe the question could be, how can the district best help you be prepared for wildfire safety power outages? Is it awareness, education, potential wildfire safety outage notifications, programs and rebates for emergency backup, et cetera, and really start to gauge where the community is on this journey with us, because there's been a lot of communication in the last 5 years, and try to move it forward. District rates and the value provided. Are people feeling that the rates and what they pay, that they get commensurate or better value for that? If we ask them, are your rates too high, that's kind of a hard question to ask, and a lot of people are feeling the pressure. So really trying to match rates and bills against value is one potential way to approach that. And, do you believe that you get high, medium, low? I don't know if that's what it'll end up be. That's for Probolski to figure out. Value for the rates that you pay for electric service. And I split out an electric and water here because I think it's important to do them separately. And then one suggestion was an open-ended question at the end of the survey. Anything else you would like to provide feedback regarding your electric or water utility services was suggested. There's an open-ended question at the beginning that we are recommending that we keep, which is down below, which is, what is the most important issue facing your community today? And the responses 5 years ago were very interesting, and it'd be interesting to trend that and see what they're saying today. But an open-ended question at the end was a possibility. Some of the honorable mentions, some repeat questions will be updated to reflect today's situations. And this includes questions on investing in water infrastructure, water quality, rebates for electrification, wildfire mitigation, and payment assistance. The remaining repeat questions would stay the same. If we don't need to change them, there's a lot of value in keeping them the same. And that does allow for the trending, and then again, recommending repeating the opening question. For fiscal impact, the board authorized the contract. There is no direct fiscal impact associated with this workshop item. And the recommendation is to receive this report and provide input and direction to staff. And I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thanks, Stephen. This is an action. Activity.
Stephen, thank you. I think you did a very good job of sort of collecting, all of our inputs and synthesizing things into this report for us. I think it may be valuable to communicate with our customers about what our board initiatives sort of evolved into, what the current status of those initiatives are, what they look like. We, evolved our undergrounding to a broader wildfire safety initiative and our greenhouse gas reductions from 100% renewable, and evolved it also into a healthy watershed. So, just so they know what the state of our initiatives are right now, so that they can know where we're coming from, I guess, and make sure that folks are aware that a healthy watershed is a fabulous carbon sink. So that, it's a lot of the things are kind of stacking benefit situations in our current set of priorities, but we don't know what we're missing until we ask. So thank you. I'm good.
I just have one question, and I echo Krista's comment about thank you for compiling all of probably was like herding cats a bit of all the different ideas and opinions. Provolsky Research, did I say that right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to take this and craft questions. Is staff, are you involved in that question making?
Oh, yeah.
Or-
So.
Oh,
the
staff is, you're not
intention-
hands off on that?
Oh, no. The intention would
Okay.
be to bring key staff in with all the feedback we've received and say, hey, Provolsky Research, here's 8 new topics that we'd like to include. There was a desire to shorten the survey if we could, so if we can shorten it, we will. And give them what we have and work with them to craft
so it
the
is a
actual
joint-
questions.
Okay.
And then I would like to use that opportunity because myself and Alex have already gone through every question with Adam and said, hey, there were some comments they didn't like how they liked the question, didn't like how it was framed, or this or that. And I'd like to bring our team and key people and essentially go through every single question and finish that meeting with a completed survey. Would be how that goes. And then we would share that with the board and launch it to the community. And then upon completion and development of the reports, Adam would come and present those results directly to the board.
Okay. And that sort of collaboration and working to craft those questions is 5 years ago. That was the same process.
Similar.
Okay. That's my only question. That's it.
Yes, ditto on the quick phone call. Highly effective, Stephen. So you told me how to prepare. I dug that thing up that Martina sent, the old questions, and then I felt we really drilled down and was super efficient and effective, and yeah, really like the presentation here with how you summarized it. So thumbs up over here. So thank you.
Thank you.
The old questionnaire did not really touch on any financial questions, i.e. customer satisfaction with rates. You touched on it a little bit tonight. Is there a reason it's not a direct question, number one? And then my second part of the question is, would not a question of where would you like the district's priority to be with available funds? There's lots of various initiatives, but it would be helpful to me if, the community's priority is wildfire. Well, that's when we're doing deliberations, we look at or infrastructure changes or those types of things.
Yeah, I believe there's one question in there that repeats that when at rates and everything, and then we were proposing adding the value component to it. So I think there would be two that touch it. I agree that, you know, a benefit of these is to try to get their priorities. It shows up in certain places, like we're asking them to prioritize the current initiatives. We're asking them if we're going to do net carbon reduction. There's a lot of different ways we could do it. What do you prefer? If we were going to do local generation, do you prefer community solar, biomass? So we have some of that in there, but if you feel that there's specific areas or questions above and beyond that, we're, you know, more than interested in seeing how we can accommodate that.
Yeah, it, you know, it says, are you satisfied? And, you know, has 3 comments kind of thing. But I would, you know, I would like to get out of this, what is a priority list of the types of things, you know. Most likely it's going to be wildfire mitigation, but as conservation, you know, where should we, you know, we are the stewards of their money. Where should we be putting our focus when spending money?
Didn't we have a question like that?
There's some.
I feel like there was a question like, if we had $10 million, where would you?
No, there's no question.
No, I put
Question number 2 on the previous survey was a list of 20 initiatives, 10 initiatives or projects that we could pursue. And it had undergrounding and 100%, and it was made to narrow down that list of, that wish list to the first 4 initiatives. So that question, you know, we're not repeating it. Obviously, it's not topical today. There are parts of the survey that address parts of what Director Randall's saying. I don't know if there's a specific question that, you know, if you had an extra dollar, where would you spend it kind of question.
Well, I guess where I'm going with it is, it says, do you want it? But what is the, maybe it's a number system. Could you prioritize your top 5 projects? Something, or top 3? What are, you know, they're the experts, not me, but something that, you know, do I want wildfire management? Yes. Do I want underground? Yes. I want all those things. But if I got to pick a top 3 or 4, what are they?
We can definitely incorporate that framework. I hear what you're saying in terms of eliciting feedback on prioritization. We have a question that's kind of adjacent to that in terms of, you know, are rates more important, reliability, carbon reduction? We have a general question like that, but I think in terms of ranking our financial priorities, we can definitely put a question in there. We'll work with Probolski on how to frame it so it's most effective in getting a response. But I think we can definitely incorporate a framework for prioritization.
Thanks, Steve. I apologize. I think that question was actually a Taos City PUD survey question.
I did read it.
He's having flashbacks.
Yeah, sorry. It happens. I think great feedback. The process, I think, was great when you brought board members in or talked to them on the phone about sort of the developing a pre-action plan. And so I think you've captured that. I'm good to go.
All right, thank you very much.
Oh, yeah.
I brought up the open-ended questions because I think there's some things that just don't fit into a box. And I think it gives customers a chance to say how they feel. And that's, it's easier to tabulate that when they're typing it out, and you can cut and paste and have a whole list. If one of the researchers is listening to that, I know that might be hard to write down and sort of get the sentiment, but I think these open-ended questions, you can start to see a trend or a theme, and I think you can really glean something out of open-ended questions. Whether it finds its place in the final survey, I don't know. But I think that's a place that is rich in information. I think that would be helpful. And we don't even know it yet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Stephen. All right. Does anyone need a break, or should we just roll into action items?
5 minutes? I don't know, stand up. Can we stand up?
5 minutes, yeah.
Thank you, 5 minutes.
Take a 5 minute. Take a 5 minute break. Use the facilities. So let's move on to action items. We will take up action item 21, consideration to approve purchase of electric department fleet equipment. Brian?
Good evening, President Laliotis and members of the board. It's my pleasure to present action item number 21 this evening and represent the fleet with consideration to approve the purchase of electric department fleet equipment. The district maintains a vehicle reserve fund for the electric and water departments. The funding for new and replacement vehicles and equipment come from the vehicle reserve fund, which is replenished with budgeted annual contributions from the electric and water departments, plus revenue from the sale of decommissioned vehicles and equipment sold at public auction. The Vehicle Reserve Fund and biannual budget process help to ensure the timely purchase and replacement of vehicles and equipment essential for the district to reliably and safely serve customers. Upon board approval and purchase, new vehicles are added to the fleet management plan and assigned an estimated useful life, where a replacement schedule for all vehicles and equipment is maintained by the district for future budget development. Equipment schedule for replacement in fiscal year 26-27 approved budget. Our vehicle number 295, a 2008 John Deere 35D excavator. It's 18 years old, has 1,720 hours of operation. And tonight we're talking about vehicle number 296 as well, a 2008 Trailer King TK12U equipment trailer. It's also 18 years old. And I'll explain that here in a minute. Vehicle number 295 is as I mentioned, a 2008 John Deere 35D mini excavator. It's used heavily for electric system construction and maintenance functions of the district, primarily to excavate new pole installations and pole replacements. The excavator is 18 years old, has 1,720 hours of operation. And during the process of building the specifications and reviewing available equipment, the electric operations and fleet staff considered both John Deere and Caterpillar brands, with the slightly larger Caterpillar 304 excavator determined to be the most beneficial to the district. Vehicle number 296, the 2008 Trailer King TK12U trailer, was purchased as a dedicated trailer for the 2008 John Deere 35D excavator. The trailer is in fair condition, however, it's also 18 years old, and staff is recommending replacement with a larger, more capable trailer with a higher payload rating to accommodate the Cat 304 excavator, as well as hold all the associated implements, extra buckets, rock hammer attachment, other attachments, and tools that are dedicated to the excavator. Staff recommended a replacement with a 2026 Felling FT20i trailer. The Felling FT20i trailer is 20 feet long, has folding ramps, and a payload capacity of 18,400 pounds. Guidelines for useful life determination and replacement scheduling of district equipment recommend replacement at 15-year intervals. We're a little bit beyond that. The guidelines support maintaining a reliable and effective fleet for the district's emergency outage and leak response and daily operation requirements. And staff recommend declaring vehicles 295 and 296 as surplus and authorizing the general manager to dispose of the units at public auction after receiving the replacement CAT 304 excavator and the Felling FT20I trailer. Sourcewell, formerly National Joint Purchase Alliance, has identified Empire Cat of Sparks, Nevada as a competitive bidder for specialized public utility equipment through an RFP process. Section 3.08.060 of District Code, joint purchasing with the state of California and other public agencies, permits the district to take advantage of other agencies' competitive procurement processes. And Empire Cat is a qualified Sourcewell vendor and provided quotes consistent with the district code requirements. Fiscal impact of this procurement, or these procurements. The fiscal year 26-27 approved budget for the excavator replacement expenditure is $110,000. Sourcewell pricing for the CAT 304 excavator from Empire Cat is $106,722 plus a 10% change order authorization, or $10,672, for a total not to exceed amount of $117,394 plus taxes and fees. The additional cost associated with the replacement represents a budget overage of $7,394, or 6% over the approved budget. Fiscal year 26-27 approved budget for the dedicated excavator trailer replacement expenditure is $23,000. Sourcewell pricing for the Felling FT20I equipment trailer from Empire Cat is $22,837 plus a 10% change order authorization, or $2,284, for a total not to exceed amount of $25,121 plus taxes and fees. The additional costs associated with the replacement represents a budget overage of $2,122, or 9%. Funds from the sale of the surplus fleet assets at public auction will be applied to the electric vehicle reserve fund. So funds will go back to the fund from those sales. Staff believes the benefits of the equipment replacements warrant consideration for approval of the variances to approved budget. The electric vehicle reserve fund balance of $2.4 million as of December 31st, 2025 is sufficient to support the planned replacement and procurement of the 2026 CAT 304 excavator and the Felling FT20I equipment trailer. And the recommendation before you tonight, recommendation A, authorize the general manager to execute a contract and other documents with Empire Cat in Sparks, Nevada for the purchase of one CAT 304 excavator in the amount of $106,722 plus a 10% change order authorization, or $10,672, for a total not to exceed amount of $117,394 plus tax and fees. Recommendation B, authorize the general manager to execute a contract and other documents with Empire Cat in Sparks, Nevada for the purchase of one Felling FT20I equipment trailer in the amount of $22,837 plus a 10% change order authorization, or $2,284, for a total not to exceed amount of $25,121 plus tax and fees. And lastly, recommendation C, declare vehicles number 295 and 296 surplus and authorize the general manager to dispose of the units at public auction, applying sale funds to the electric vehicle reserve fund. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Brian. Any public comment on this item tonight? Seeing none, we will close public comment. Director comments?
Just have a quick question. How much does a used John Deere mini excavator get at public auctions? What's the expected bid on that baby?
So I did do some research online, and there is a range depending on, excuse me, condition, and roughly about 15,000, 15 to 20,000.
Good. Okay, that should cover that $7,000 to $8,000, 10% shortfall. Okay. I'm assuming the same is true of the trailer. It has some resale value.
It does have resale value, and yeah, I would anticipate that it would probably be more than the overage, proposed overage. You're welcome.
I understand California State Procurement used it many times when I was working. Sourcewell is new to me. Is that a federal program and the district has the ability to utilize that versus the California State Procurement, or is it part of it? It just, when I saw we were purchasing from Sparks and out of California, I assume that goes past the California State Procurement unless there's things that have changed.
Sourcewell is actually, it's national procurement program based in Minnesota. But any vendor, say Caterpillar, they're national as well. And so they engage a RFP process through Sourcewell, and then they're authorized to provide for public procurement qualify for the public procurement process.
So are you going through California State Procurement or Sourcewell?
Sourcewell.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the district has the ability to do that, I'm assuming.
Yeah, excuse me. Under California Procurement Code, there are provisions in there where you can use California Joint Purchasing Authorities or similar programs that meet the same qualifications in terms of competitive public procurement processes, and use those same qualifying bids. With district has used National Joint Purchasing Alliance for many years. They transitioned to Sourcewell. I believe their office is in Minnesota somewhere, but it meets all the qualifies for all the California Procurement Code requirements.
They're not necessarily federal. They're a spin-off of, another agency. Yeah. There's a few that do it just because they can make some money off of it. And offer it to people like us, very, very far away. So I don't have any comments. Very informative, lots of information. Thank you, Brian. So we have a recommendation from staff, items A, B, and C as presented. Do we have a motion?
So move. Staff's recommendation, please.
I'll second.
All right, motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
I think you're still up here, huh?
Okay. Good evening, President Loliotis and members of the board. It's my pleasure to present action item number 22 this evening, representing the facilities side of the world. Consideration to approve a construction services contract with Creekside Commercial Builders, Inc. for district headquarters security enhancements. District staff have been considering opportunities to enhance facility security at district headquarters in the areas around the main public access entry, interior lobby, and the customer service counter. Staff contacted industry professionals and researched available products with attention to installing UL 457 Level 3 ballistic glass with countertop-mounted transaction windows at the customer service counter to enhance workplace safety. Staff also considered installation of intrusion-resistant forced entry security film on the exterior windows of the lobby area, main entryway, and the first floor windows on the east side of the facility. Staff assembled a bid schedule to reflect the scope of the work in these areas and published to the public bid solicitation process. Outlining the project scope, installing 4 custom ballistic interior vertical baffle transaction line systems, that's a mouthful, at the main customer service and ADA service counters. Installation of ballistic interior finished fiberglass panels in front of the main service counter and ADA service counters on the walls portion under and adjacent to the counter. And then installation or replacement of one wood door with a ballistic door with a window offset window. And then the installation of the forced entry security film on the exterior windows of the lobby area, entryway doors, and first floor east side offices. This is a little description. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but description of the baffle transaction window system proposed. Essentially, it's a system that protects the individual behind it while allows natural sound transmission to flow through, so there wouldn't be any kind of microphone or speaker system attached to it, and you could have a natural conversation. It would still protect the customer service individual behind it. Here's an example of some other agencies where this application has been installed, just for a visual. Ours would be fully enclosed as well, full ceiling to top of counter. Common application at public agencies. And this is a little information about the forced entry film, security window film. It's strong. It's not ballistic or bulletproof, but when the glass is struck or shatters, the film holds the glass in place. So it would, helps the barrier prevent and helps prevent entry. Excuse me. The district issued a request for bids on March 5th, 2026 for district headquarters security enhancements on the district website. The request for bids was published in the Sierra Sun newspaper on March 6th, 2026. And the bid opening was held for district headquarters security enhancements at 2 p.m. on April 7th. The district received one bid with a bid amount of $150,027 from Creekside Commercial Builders Incorporated from Sacramento, California. The bid received was considered responsive. The fiscal impact of the district headquarters security enhancements is an estimated project total of $176,030. And you can see the breakdown that there's the bid amount included a 10% contingency and a small allowance for district internal labor and materials, essentially to help remove some of the finishes and preserve some of the finishes in the area and outside the counter that have recently been remodeled, with a project total of $176,030. The electric utility fiscal year 26 capital expenditure budget includes $115,000 for building-related capital expenditures. Last month, the board approved $68,000 for asphalt replacement from this budget line item. So this item's $176,000 plus the $68,000 for asphalt replacement, and including another small general contingency of $30,000 for the remainder of fiscal year 26 equals a total of $274,000. The total of $274,000 equates to a variance over the budgeted $115,000 of $159,000. The electric utilities capital reserve balance was $22.51 million and $22.55 million as of December 31st, 2025 year end, and March 31st, 2026 respectively. This balance is due in part to deferred capital expenditures budgeted but not expended from prior years, driven primarily by the ongoing facility master plan efforts and the anticipation or the outcome of what will become the headquarters building long term. Staff are currently forecasting the projected near-term useful life of this building to support this lobby improvement project. And the recommendation before you this evening is to authorize the general manager to execute a construction services contract and associated documents with Creekside Commercial Builders Incorporated for the bid amount of $150,027 plus a change order authorization of 10% or $15,003 for a total contract authorization not to exceed amount of $165,030. And with that, I am available for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Brian. Any public comment on this item tonight? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to director questions and comments. Krista?
I'm dismayed that I live in a timeline that requires this item to be on our agenda, but it's been a weird fall and spring, and obviously, no comments, no questions.
I do. Has there been an incident or an experience that is driving this need?
Not that I can speak of, or not that I'm aware of, but definitely the current environment that Director Finn kind of alluded to definitely is a driving factor in this request.
I'd like to expand. Sorry about
yep,
that.
go ahead. Yep,
Director
yeah.
Morrell.
Go ahead.
The motivation or the driver behind this project is that we've, over the last 5 or 6 years, have seen some changing environments in our customer interface in the lobby. And it's really started with the fact that we started seeing trends in larger cash payments of utility bills. So the actual use of cash, larger utility bills, there's various reasons for that, but there's segments of our customer base that prefer to pay their utility bills in cash, and they can be, quite large bills, both residential and commercial. We have had a couple of incidents in the lobby with kind of heightened anxiety created by customers with higher levels of frustration for various reasons, and some feedback from our customer-facing staff was concerning for us in terms of their level of safety and the anxiety that it created for our staff. And we've also are very aware of some of the incidents that have happened locally in recent history, and so staff is definitely recommending that the district move forward with some security enhancements. We had established and invested in security provisions in other part of our office, including behind the counter we think it's definitely appropriate at this time that we invest a little bit more in that front-facing security at the front of the counter.
And then my last question is this is the PUD's direction. I'm just sort of curious of other government buildings, town of Truckee, the courthouse, Jeff, maybe you know that, or if they are also moving in this direction. I don't know if you were able to benchmark or ask.
There, excuse me, there are already ballistic security enhancements, at least at the town of Truckee, at the Truckee Police Department, their service counter. Not sure about the courthouse, but I would, imagine there probably are, or maybe are.
Not yet at the building department, and I'm putting my money across the
right.
large amounts, but it's a check across the
Yes.
counter. Okay, that's all.
No question on my part for the need for the project, but what was the projected budget for this project? How far over budget is it, and how can you justify the overage when we only had one bidder?
So there was no specific budget allocated for this project. And if I can go back here, the overage to our general contingency budget, building-related contingency budget, would be forecasted at $159,000.
What I'm trying to get at is, do you feel it's a good bid? If we were to go out to bid again for whatever reason, is this a fair bid in your mind based on your experience and what you know about the project?
That's a great question, Director Randall. I don't really have anything to compare it to qualify it in that way. I will say that during the bid process, we did hold a pre-bid conference, and several contractors did attend the pre-bid conference, and I anticipated that we would receive more than one bid, and I was surprised that we only received the one.
I think if I could add to this, the project was unbudgeted because we hadn't, at the time of budget development, anticipated this need. But based on additional experiences, like I mentioned in the lobby and nearby community, we think from a timeliness perspective, safety being a core value of our organization, it's important that we support that staff. This is relatively unique work in terms of finding vendors that could be responsive to our bid request. It involves the custom fabrication of the panels and the assembly of them. From what I understand, the other contractors who did not bid on the project either couldn't fit it in their schedule or it didn't fit in their size and scope, were likely to be a smaller project than some of the other larger municipal projects across the state. So as Brian said, we don't have much to reference this from, but it's not likely that we would get more bidders should we make a determination to go back out to bid. It's from the feedback of the contractors that participated, availability and mobilization and size and scope of the project were a concern of theirs.
Was there a reason that you didn't have a projected budget on this?
At the time we developed the budget, we hadn't fully come to the determination that this was going to be a project we move forward with.
Is there any other entities that you can compare this price to?
Yeah, staff could take on that that process, go through other public agencies, and
Like I said, I have no problem with the project. I think it's great in that. I just want to ensure that we're not spending an extra $50,000 on it. I want to know that we're getting a fair price. And I know government is higher and prevailing wage and all that, but I have no justification that it's somewhat of a fair price.
At the board's direction, we could reject all bids and go out and solicit other bids, or we could come back to the board with maintain this bid submittal as responsive, come back to this board with an evaluation on competitive price analysis, kind of a cost per linear foot of this resource. The challenge, we'd have to work with our apparent low bidder here. Typically, bid submittals have an expiration date. Typically, contract bid submittals are only good somewhere between 10 and 30 days of receipt. So we'd have to work with that vendor on that to ensure that they would honor that price if we did not engage in a contract until later on in June.
Like I said, I'm fine with the project. I want to know that it's a reasonable price. With only one bid, I can't make that justification. I am fine with you coming back with, some projected costs. That shows me that it's a fair price.
If that's the board's direction to staff, we will
That's
absolutely
just
do
me
that.
Speaking.
Yep.
It's up to the rest of the board.
Jeff, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I like the project. I don't know if I mean, Steve, are you kind of suggesting approving it tonight and then, oh, it's okay. All right, just to clarify, you like the project, but you
Brian's
can't.
option
Yeah.
is fine for me. He comes back with saying, they did a project at XYZ and they were $20 a square foot or whatever the number is. And this is within that ballpark. I'm okay with that, but that's entirely up to the board. I'm just one voter.
I mean, my general feeling on that is that Creekside probably was assuming other people were going to bid on it, right?
Maybe.
So, but
Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
you've seen bids up here.
right,
and, I mean,
big variance.
You can look at what we had tonight, and the range of bids is a couple $100,000 on some of these other projects. So that's all.
Anything else, Jeff?
No, not at the moment. Well, and when is the bid accessible to just look at to see when it might expire, or when it expires, or is that's not something we can dig into now?
This evening, no.
Okay.
Probably not.
Got it.
Typically, our standard documents require that the contractor be responsive within 10 days of notice to proceed, and their submittals typically have a provision that bid submitted prices are good for anywhere between 10 to 30 days. 30 days is usually a typical timeline.
Nothing further.
Okay, so I think, Steve, if you want to pursue this, why don't you make a motion to table this item and request staff to come back with additional.
Well, I'm not hearing from the other board members may want to approve it, so.
Well, that's what, if you do a motion and nobody seconds it or no one approves it, then that's your answer.
Okay, I'll make a motion to delay the acceptance of the bid subject to information that shows it's a fair bid and we could take it up at the next board meeting, which I won't be here for, so.
Is there a second to this motion? All right. Understanding the silence,
Yeah.
I will say there is no.
I didn't second it, but can I make a comment? And I did want to
Yes,
say,
of
I mean,
course.
that's how, I would second it and then we'd open it up for discussion, right? So, but I just have a question. So if the motion was to have the general manager go seek that information, but a bid is a bid. So the information you're going to get, it's comparable bids for elsewhere and other companies for other types of scenarios. I mean, how do you compare that?
What we'll likely do, if the board gives us direction to come back with further analysis, we would engage with the contractor that submitted the bid, let them know that what we're doing, that we need to do some competitive market analysis to see if they would continue to honor their bid beyond the expiration date. Staff would go, and we have access and contacts with other public agencies, municipalities that have done projects with this type of equipment from this company. Typically, this type of project would be a subcontractor on a larger remodel project or a larger construction project. We were trying to identify some comparative analysis on similar equipment on a cost per foot, or so we can create some sort of cost per unit measurement that we can compare our bid to.
Okay, that's a good answer.
And
Yeah.
one of the
Yeah.
options for the board is the recommendation as proposed by Director Randall. There's also a provision in there that we could reject all bids, or the board, I'm sorry, could reject all bids based on the price point. That's not within the board's comfortable limit of budget approval, since it was an unbudgeted item.
And that's not my suggestion.
Yeah. No, I know. I'm not saying that's your suggestion.
I'm pro-project. I want to make sure it's price fair.
Okay, do I hear a second? All right, I'm going with motion fails because of no second. I don't have any further comments. I hear you. I think this project is a good project. I'm comfortable with the price issue, but I think more importantly is sort of more of the general direction to staff that perhaps in the future with projects like this, or a bidding environment that comes back like this, that we get additional information included in the board packet or in this presentation that helps the board understand where this project lands in the world of price. So that's kind of my feedback tonight.
And that would be if there's just one bid coming in. Right,
There's-
because then you have a comparison otherwise,
I mean,
right?
I
Is that what
think
you're?
we should always, there should be a budget at amount, and then you make a comparison when the bids come in. You know, if it's $25,000 over budget, that doesn't mean we don't approve it, but we have no statistical, there was no projected budget on it. And
Yeah,
that's,
I think this was a placeholder a staff put in for improvements to the facilities. It wasn't necessarily you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it wasn't necessarily the identified project for that 115,000.
Correct. This staff proposes for board approval each year, or each budget cycle, dollar amounts based on expected improvements that may need to be made for this facility. Paving is one of them. Unexpected repairs, things of that nature, based on our past expenses for facilities. And so the budgeted amount for fiscal year 26 and 27 was a placeholder for general maintenance to the district. We had planned on a paving replacement project. We hadn't anticipated this one, and so there was no established budget or engineer's estimate for this project. Again, this is relatively unique work, not something as reflected by the fact that only we received one bid. And so we don't have budgetary estimates to compare against. We can absolutely go back and go through the public agencies and municipalities that have had similar work done and see where this falls.
I feel like this is a project that He said it wasn't foreseen. I suspect that I'm just thinking of Truckee in the past this spring, and we had a shooting, and we had a car go through Safeway, and I think we had, things that made us feel unsafe, right, and made our staff feel unsafe, and it wasn't foreseen. But sometimes you have, I wouldn't consider this an emergency situation, but certainly something that needs some sense of urgency. And that was a surprise. And that's just something that I think sometimes boards have to roll with, As you pointed out, I mean, just spitballing in my head, I imagine, like, I'm not, the price doesn't surprise me in any way, even though I don't have anything to compare it to. And sometimes you just have to handle the things that are surprising in your budget. And that is why we have reserves and why we have cushions built into the whole process.
I concur. I believe the safety outweighs the value. And then I like Tony's suggestion to, if we do get a one bid scenario, to apply the Randall effect. The justification, for that. And I just, in this scenario, I agree. I just want to say I want to move staff's recommendation because the safety outweighs the value of relooking at it, and a sense of urgency to just address staff safety as soon as it's identified, and we understand that and move forward with it.
Was that a motion?
That was a motion.
I'll second that motion.
All right. I have a motion and a second. Any final comments?
Actually, just one. So the motion does include, if it is a single bid, to provide backup information or justification of that this is a fair bid? Is that kind of what was?
On future projects.
That's what I meant on
Yeah,
future.
on future
I just want to
projects,
make
not-
sure.
Yeah. It's not necessarily, doesn't need to be part of the motion.
I would recommend that not be a part of the motion.
Okay.
The motion is to either approve the item as presented or to not approve and come back with some more analysis. But I do hear the direction and guidance from board for future publicly bid projects to provide some more information and background on that.
So the motion is as presented?
Motion as
Okay.
presented. Staff's recommendation by Brian.
So motion by Jeff, second by Krista. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? One opposition, duly noted. Motion carries. Thank you, Brian. Thanks, Steve, for your feedback too. Okay, we are on to item 23, consideration of a contract for Martis Valley Substation Modernization 2026.
Good evening, President Lalios, members of the board. Josh Campbell, Senior Electric Engineer. This is action item 23, consideration of a contract for Martis Valley Substation Modernization 2026. I'll go through the background pretty quickly here, as this was all before the board in the April board meeting. Martis Valley Substation was commissioned in 1982. It's fully depreciated. Portions of the substation are nearing the end of their useful service life. The substation is a critical backup for redundancy and reliable system operation, and it serves the electric service territory south of the Truckee River and east of Donner Lake. District engineering staff began working on a rebuild project in 2021. Overall project scope: modernization and rebuild of the substation, relocation of the outdoor 12.5 kV distribution bus and the existing 120 kV protection equipment into the indoor switchgear control enclosure, or SCE. Placement of the SF6 high voltage circuit switcher with a vacuum circuit breaker. Relocation of battery backup and addition of the secondary electric station service. Upgrades to existing protection equipment and the SCADA system inside the sub. civil improvements throughout, but mostly focused on reconfiguring the layout of the sub, addressing some of the aging infrastructure, drainage and improvements to substation security, provisions for future distribution feeders, and potential alternative energy storage solutions. Long lead procurements were approved by the board in August of 2024. The delivery of both took place last fall. Also, last summer, 2025, civil construction or phase one, civil infrastructure, predominantly in the storage yard, conduit, vaults, boxes, etc. Concrete foundation for the SCE, ground grid improvements. This project took place without impacting the operation of the existing substation infrastructure. Substantial completion in October of last year, and the notice of completion was approved by the board in the January 2026 board meeting. Phase two for 2026, demolition of the existing distribution bus, civil improvements throughout the north yard and south of the substation fence, new control wiring throughout due to the relocation of most of the infrastructure in the sub, rerouting and reconductoring of the feeder circuits, the getaways, grading and new paving for storage, substation security upgrades, and testing and commissioning of all of the new equipment. Project benefits include reliability, it's reduced exposure of energized parts to wildlife and weather, extended service life of equipment in a climate-controlled environment, operability and maintainability, improved load transferability for maintenance and outage response, modern SCADA hardware, and pre-wiring it for future supervisory control. Security, lighting and camera upgrades, and maintaining paved and secured storage inside the sub, as well as improving access. Scalability, as previously mentioned, there's provisions for future feeder circuits or alternative energy solutions. The bid for this project was originally issued in February of 2026. Clerical error, as previously mentioned in the April board meeting during the posting of the bid, affected notifications. A total of 2 bids were received. The board, during that April board meeting, approved the rejection of all bids received. April 2nd, the bid was reissued the morning following the April 1 board meeting and republished in the CR Sun on April 10th. On April 15th, a pre-bid site meeting was held. 28 people attended from 9 different companies. Bid opening was held on April 28th. The district received a total of 5 bids that are summarized in the table on the slide. The bid from First Electric and Automation in the amount of $1,475,000 was judged to be unresponsive for a number of issues. They did not complete the bid schedule, which is a requirement of the bid documents. The other 4 bids were considered responsive in the amounts shown on the screen. Unfortunately, the Mountain Engineering bid had math errors on 3 of the line items. There's a process prescribed in the bid documents to use for corrections of mathematical errors. That process was used to address these 3 math errors, and this resulted in increased totals on 2 of the line items in the amounts of $152,000 and $1,009,800. The third item was a minor error, would have resulted in a decreased total on the third line item of $38. The corrected bid total using the process in the bid documents was $3,353,357. The table in the slide before you rearranges the bids in numerical order and incorporates the corrections to the Mountain Engineering bid. After these corrections, RK Contractors Incorporated was determined to be the lowest responsive bidder with a bid total of $2,709,000. Slide is a project timeline. The green parts on the screen here are dates that have passed, resulted to the bid process that I covered earlier. The red is the consideration of contract award this evening. And the black below the horizontal axis is some approximate dates, tentative dates for construction. A notice to proceed in a pre-construction meeting in the coming weeks, and then substantial completion and completion of construction in December. And the anticipation would be project closeout to follow in the January board meeting. Fiscal impact, the 3-year capital budget, fiscal years 24 through 26 for this project was a total of $8 million. Staff expects some additional costs to be incurred in this year during construction. That includes things such as internal labor, material that has been purchased by the district to provide to the contractor, and design consultant costs. The forecast total project expenses, including this item and the additional fiscal year 26 project costs, is just shy of $8 million, $7,979,098. The electric capital reserve balance of $22.3 million as of March 4th, 2026 is sufficient for these project expenditures, including the 2026 construction contract being considered with this agenda item. The recommendation before you this evening is to authorize the general manager to execute a construction services contract with RK Contractors Incorporated for the Mars Valley Substation Modernization 2026 contract in the amount of $2,709,000 plus a 10% change order authorization for a total not to exceed contract amount of $2,979,900. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Josh. Okay, I will open this item up for public comment.
Wait a little while. Good evening, President Leotis and board. My name is Tim Rupert. I'm representing Rupert Inc. We were the low bidder at the first bid of this project. And I just wanted to give a little information. We've been in business for now just over 20 years. We started locally, my brother Nate and I, and another brother Josh. And so we built the business up, and and we're extremely grateful for the work that PUD has given us. Right now we're doing, we have contracts for 2 projects for PUD this year, totaling almost $3 million. So we're very grateful for that. I didn't understand fully what was happening at the last board meeting, otherwise I would have attended. And I feel that, and actually all of our staff feels that we should have been here as a presence. There's not a lot of there's a lot of explaining, I guess, to do of why a bid got thrown out that was legitimately placed. It was for almost $1 million under PUD's budget for the project, was stated at last meeting. And I know that the explanation was that it was thrown out because there wasn't enough bidders at the project. And yet, here we are now, we're at another contractor's being awarded this project, and he's $700,000 more plus contingency, which puts him right at $20,000 under your guys' budget. And just that to say, RK, Ryan Couts is actually a buddy. He's a friend, and we've worked and bid against each other many times. And so there's no hard feelings against RK. It's just the process that this has gone through, and now the additional money that PUD will now pay for this project. When we went in the first bid, it was clearly 2 people at the bid, us and RK. And last year we lost a bid to RK for some pole holes at the end of the year. It was a quick project, and Ryan came in under us because he knew we were bidding it, and took the job from us. And so we sharpened our pencil a lot on this project because we wanted it. And we are confident that we can make money at that price. So all that to say, we're not contesting the bid in any way. We actually are a subcontractor, or we submitted our price as a subcontractor for this. We did not submit as a prime contractor because of a feeling we felt that maybe the real reason is because we have a general engineering license and we're not an prime electrical contractor, that maybe PUD wanted somebody as a prime electrical contractor to perform this work. And so we decided to back out of the prime position and just come in as a subcontractor. So we submitted our numbers for concrete and a lot of other work as a sub. And so all that to say, the bottom line of what we would like to request is that according to the subs we were dealing with, it seems like a lot of the electrical components are between 12 and 24 weeks out, which puts us pretty late in the summer and probably hard to complete this project. And if that is true across the board, I know Mountain Enterprises they're a larger company as a sub, and they probably have better connections for getting these components and maybe can do it earlier. But if that's the case, this project might end up just getting pushed to next year. And if that's the case, we would like the opportunity to rebid it later this year or early next year. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Tim. Any other public comment tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to board comments. Jeff, I'll start with you.
I think Josh, do you want to kind of enlighten us again on the process regarding Tim's comments tonight? That would be kind of, or Brian, do you want to?
I have a comment that might give some clarification. It was staff's recommendation last month not to accept the low bid from Rupert based on the fact that they thought there were some irregularities and there wasn't enough bidders. When it came to this board, it was a 3-2 vote not to accept staff's recommendation. So I think that's important that you know that the board was split on this, in that a couple board members felt we should proceed with the bid because, in my experience, when you go out to bid, they always come back higher. You know, time of the year is not good, so that's a little bit of justification for you.
You want me to address Director Bender's question?
Sure.
Okay. I appreciate Mr. Rupert's comments, and I know they're heartfelt and honest, and definitely the district's in support of local contractors, the board's in support of local contractors. The recommendation at the last meeting was purely based on the fact that the district had made a clerical error in terms of its distribution and announcement and notification on the pre-bid process. And following the bid opening, when we received 2 bids, staff had a concern that based on what we anticipated as potential interest from vendors, we didn't receive bids. And so staff reached out to those vendors and confirmed that the clerical error, administrative error, and not having a timely notification was a primary reason why they hadn't had time to prepare or potentially submit a bid. And so we brought back an item to this board. This is a very important project for the district, a very important investment, and understanding and recognizing that we did not receive the competitive interest that we anticipated. The recommendation was to reject all bids based on that and go back out, give the other entities that had expressed interest in the project an opportunity to bid on the project, to ensure that we were validating the competitive price, very much akin to the discussion in the previous board item with the one submittal on security provisions. There's concerns when you don't have the participation, bid participation in a project. And so staff's recommendation, great deliberation and discussion at the board meeting on potential options. And the board approved through the vote to reject all bids based on not having a competitive participation. And so staff did go back out to bid. made contact to ensure that all of the parties that expressed interest were notified in a timely manner, went out to back to public notification. As Josh pointed out, we did receive a much more competitive bid. Unfortunately, there was some errors that, in accordance with the district's bidder's instructions and provisions for correcting those errors, caused that bid to be much higher than what the bidder had anticipated or intended. So the next highest bid was RK, and that's what's before you this evening.
Good for now. Good for now. Anything else, Steve? Krista?
You know, I just want to say I appreciate you coming and explaining your position on it. I was one of the board members that approved staff recommendation to go back out to bid, and my thinking on that was pretty simple and straightforward. It was just that we had made a mistake as the district and we needed to fix it. So we had to do things right, and sometimes that benefits different people at different times. And unfortunately, you kind of got the crummy end of that stick, and I apologize for that. But we can't see what the future holds, and I feel like we always have to just stand by our. If you make a mistake, you fix your mistake, and sometimes you pay a price for it. So, but I don't think it's any reflection at all on the quality of work that you guys do and the desire of this district to do the best we can by our constituents. So, thank you.
I just have one question. So and I'm not sure who's going to answer this. So when it goes out to rebid, that's a clean slate, correct? Anybody can bid.
Yes, the previous
Okay.
bid was closed in terms of the board authorized the rejection of all bids. And so the re-advertisement is to restart the process. All bidders previously bid or didn't bid are welcome and have an opportunity to bid on it. So it's re-advertised with an open bid opportunity.
So everybody could rebid. So clean slate.
I would add to that staff did notify a lengthy list of either previous bidders or other bidders that we had contact with in that week time frame or so between opening of the previous bid and incorporating the board's approving the rejection of those bids. There was a lot of communication and a lot of additional companies that got direct emails advising them of the bid being reposted or posted under the second time, directions to the website where they could view the bid documents as a summary of the scope of work.
So clean slate. Okay. That's my only question.
Yeah, I mean, there's no crystal ball. You're right. The reasons that I was one of the votes to not reject the bids was a concern over this scenario, and that, I felt like we did get responsive bids because that's what staff told us. But we are a board of 5, and that's sometimes how the vote goes. This project is important to the district, to the community, to the ratepayers, to the customers of the Mars Valley substation. I, in my opinion, believe further delays don't serve the best interest of the customers. In principle, I'm not happy, but I am going to put the priority of this project first, and because I think it needs to get done. So that's my position. Tim, thank you for coming out. and talking to us tonight. You are a valued contractor in this community. You know, sometimes we have to learn lessons the hard way. Wish you'd been here a month ago. You know, because you are part of this community, and we do want to hear from you. We do want to hear your concerns, and know that that you guys are out there doing the best for the community, which we do know. So, anyway, I'm not going to ramble on anymore because it's really late. Are there any other board comments tonight? If
Yeah, I
not,
was just looking at the numbers, just, yeah, 700 grand.
No, it's $1 million plus.
Well, 2.709
contingencies.
compared to,
And the last bid was 1.2.
no.
no,
2 million. It's-
2.038795 and 4 cents.
Last month.
Yeah, I was like, oh, wait, I've got access to it on this, so I
700
yeah.
without contingency, 900
Correct.
with contingency is the difference.
Because there's no motion yet, right?
There is no motion yet.
One more question. So, because there's a discussion of the prior bid, and yet that prior bid was not resubmitted. Correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay.
I think Tim did explain why they didn't resubmit. All right, well, we have a recommendation from staff. Do we have a motion?
I move that we authorize the general manager to execute construction services as per staff recommendation.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Second by Jeff, motion by Krista. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed with the statement that we left whatever the number is, 900,000 on the table.
And I was aye. I
You
didn't.
were aye? Okay.
I
All right.
wasn't quick enough to the mic.
All right. So only opposition was Director Randall with his statement. So thank you, Steve. Motion carries. Thanks, everyone, for tonight. Thank you, Tim. I believe that was not our last action item.
Second to last. Either batten cleanup or ninth, one of the two. Good evening, President Leliotis, members of the board. Action item 24, consideration of electric construction service contract for system hardening strip 6. So the background, the district continues to implement the implementation of a system hardening program for fiscal year 2026. The budget includes $6 million for system hardening. System hardening supports our SCADA reliability improvement project phase 6. The current facilities have limitations, aging poles, their structural deficiencies, and inadequate capacity to support the fiber that's going to be installed with the project that Scott brought to board last month. So we are taking a do-it-once approach. We want to prepare our infrastructure now to support the future fiber installations. We want to avoid returning later to have to rebuild the same facilities. The benefits, it eliminates duplicate construction, reduces mobilization construction costs, and minimizes repeat outages to our customers, and improves the overall project efficiency. The project prepares the system once so that we do not have to rebuild it later. The scale of this project is 2.5 miles. It includes our system hardening protocols that we've implemented with going from wood to metal poles, ductile iron in this case, covered conductor, as well as other system hardening upgrades that we are performing. There's a map of the area. This is the Glenshire section. See if I can get my pointer to work here. This is Glenshire Road. going down, crosses a river. You may recall Mr. Crow mentioned this river crossing, railroad crossing right here. That's going to be done at a later date. That's currently with our engineering consultant to prepare that for us. The second phase starts at Brockway, goes behind the old behind the Cottonwood restaurant and up Ponderosa, Silver Fir Drive. I'm sorry, the pointer is slow. And Aspenwood over to the end of the project here. Again, 2.5 miles. So the procurement process is we did advertise in the Sierra Sun, conducted per District Code 3.08. We received 10 bids. 9 bids were determined to be responsive. 1 bid deemed non-responsive. And once again, this is a second for this contractor, First Electric Automation. Josh and I did conduct a phone call with them yesterday to discuss why their bids were non-responsive, so they have a better understanding of how the public process works. Here's the bid results. So Herman Weisker Power was the low bid at $1,170,896.88. And you can see it goes all the way to over $3.5 million. So big gap. Did review all the bids, and just about everyone here had a low bid item. So it was what I'd consider very competitive. Again, going back to the scale, 2.5 miles. As far as our costs are concerned, we have both internal and external design costs associated with this project, $46,500 roughly. Materials, about $935,000. The construction cost with this low bid is 1.1 and change, with the contingency of $117,090.12. We're going to have some internal inspection fees. We're going to have our troublemen out inspecting these facilities, make sure they meet district standards. That's roughly $25,000. Total cost of this project is anticipated to be $2.29 million. And you're looking at it from a cost per mile perspective, it's $918,000 per mile, which is below our $1 million target that we put in our budget. The fiscal impact, the total contract amount of $1,170,896.88 plus change order authorization at 10% or $117,090.12 for a total construction contract not to exceed $1,287,987. Funding for this project is included in the board-approved electric utility capital improvement budget under 2026. System hardening and reliability improvements of $6 million. As of March 31st, 2026, electric reserve balance were $10.8 million and $22.5 million operating and capital respectively. Recommendation for tonight is to authorize the general manager to execute a construction service contract with Herman Weisker Power Incorporated for the district's electric system hardening project in the amount of $1,170,896.88 plus a change order authorization of 10% or $117,090.12 for a total construction contract not to exceed $1,287,987. With that, I'll turn it back to you, President Laliotis.
Seeing none. Director comments? Jeff?
None. Thank you.
Krista?
I don't have anything to add either.
Thank you. I don't have anything to add. I'm glad it came close to our budget or slightly under budget, which scares me because the rest of the bids were significantly higher.
Just can't win.
Yeah.
So President Liliotis, if I could just make a comment, I did reach out to this bidder on 3 different occasions, and they were very comfortable with their bid. So I had the same concern.
All right, I don't have anything else. We have a recommendation.
I'll move staff's recommendation.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye. Oh, sorry.
On record, that was an aye, correct? Yes. Okay. Seeing no opposition, motion carries. And that is it. We are adjourned.